this rumor is out here that the Giants are going to sign Daniel Jones for $40 to $45 million per season. If I'm Lamar Jackson, I do not sign a contract until Daniel Jones signs a contract, because those two guys at the position aren't even comparable to the impact that they have on the offense and on a NFL game every Sunday. And you just look at the guaranteed money that Russell Wilson has, Kyler Murray has, that guaranteed at $189 million guaranteed, and Russell Wilson guaranteed at $161 million. Would you not say that Lamar Jackson is a better quarterback than all three of those guys that I just named?
Yes.
Yes, he is.
Right.
So in his own right, he can fight for the money that he wants. He wants the guaranteed money, which I don't think that the Baltimore Ravens are willing to give him. I believe he's going to end up on a franchise tag, and if he doesn't get the long-term deal that he wants, I believe that the Baltimore Ravens will trade him. I really do, because something is just telling me this deal is supposed to have been done a long time ago. If you really want this man to be your quarterback, give him the guaranteed money, because it seems that this 40 number and this 45 is the going number for quarterbacks these days. And that is the franchise tag number. So he's going to get a franchise tag, or he's going to be traded. I believe those are the two options for him moving forward. And just like you said, if you're the Washington Commanders, you got Scary Terry and, some of the weapons that they have down there in Washington on offense.
Jahan.
It makes them a competitor and contender to win the NFC East immediately with the Philadelphia Eagles. So I don't know the salary cap situation with Washington, but just like you said, if you want to make a splash and you want to go out and change the identity and the culture of your organization with everything that's been surrounding Daniel Snyder over the last how many years it's been, extend your hand across the river and grab that young man, Lamar Jackson, and I can guarantee you, you will win a lot more football games than with Howell and Taylor Heineke.
All right, let me ask you. Here's what I'll say, and because I totally agree with what you're saying. Take a listen to what DaCosta had to say, because to me, it sounds as though he's trying to get this done and he's trying to be reasonable about it. And even the coach chimed in, John Harbaugh chimed in on it. Let's take a listen to what they had to say and just let me know, how does this change in any way how you feel about them maybe being willing to trade him. Here's what DaCosta had to say.
Well, you can't win in this league without a strong quarterback. I mean, that's been proven. So we want Lamar here. We think he's one of the best quarterbacks in the league. He's certainly one of our best players, and we want him back. And so, yeah, we understand that. Living in a world without a quarterback is a bad world to live in. And I think there's a lot of GMs and coaches who would probably say that, who are living in that world right now. We're aware of that. I think we've been blessed since 2008 to have Joe Flacco and Lamar Jackson. And my goal is to continue that.
Now, here's what John Harbaugh had to say.
He's my quarterback. He's my guy. I love him. As a coach, I'm looking forward to seeing it get done, but it's not easy. It's never easy. It's the business part of it. But I'm really hopeful and excited, fervently hopeful, and can't wait for it to get done.
I got to say, we heard a lot of this when Dak Prescott was in the thick of trying to get his contract done. I didn't think that they would get a contract done because I thought that he was possibly asking for more than what Dallas was going to be willing to give, but they awarded him. Now, I don't know that he gets a fully guaranteed contract, but he will get a lot of guaranteed money. I mean, does what you heard DaCosta and Harbaugh say give you any inkling or any kind of feeling that they are going to figure out a way to get this done and keep him there? I know if it made me feel that way.
First of all, DaCosta said he's one of our best players. He's your best player.
Hands down. What
are you talking about? He's one of the top 5 quarterbacks in the world. Let's get that squared away right now.
Hands down.
So DaCosta is pretty much implying that they are going to get this deal done. And I don't believe that Lamar is asking for a fully guaranteed contract. I just believe that he wants more guaranteed money than the guys that I just named.
Like Kyler Murray.
And Russell Wilson. And which he is right, which he should.
He should get
But I believe that the Baltimore Ravens don't want to give him $200 million in guaranteed money. That's my belief. If he is a member of this football team next season, he will play under a franchise tag. And John Harbaugh, he still will be your guy. He's your man. You love him to death.
Is he? Or does it deteriorate?
Listen, the business side of it gets in the way, and we all know that. And if you can get a lot of value for him, maybe you can get 2 or 3 first rounds in a trade, send him to Washington like we just said earlier. But I don't believe that he's going to get this long-term deal that he's looking for. I believe that he's going to play on the franchise tag if he's the quarterback for the Baltimore Ravens next year.
All right, well, let's take a quick breather here, and let's go to my man Isaac Lowenkron for some trending news. What you got, Lo?
LeVar, the NBA issued a statement a short time ago saying that the league is investigating a social media post made by Memphis Grizzlies star Ja Morant. Morant went on his Instagram live overnight from a club and briefly brandished what appeared to be a small gun. Morant's off-the-court actions have been under scrutiny after the Washington Post reported this week that he was accused in police reports of flashing a gun at a 17-year-old last summer and in a separate incident threatening a security official at a mall. On the college basketball scoreboard right now, number 24 Texas A&M leading second-ranked Alabama 26-13 with 7 minutes left to play in the first half. And 7th-ranked Baylor trailing at home to Iowa State 26-14 with 4.5 minutes remaining in the first half. Finally, the Kansas City Star newspaper reports that Jackson Mahomes, the younger brother of Chiefs quarterback Patrick Mahomes, is being investigated by police for allegedly assaulting a male waiter at a Kansas City area restaurant and then forcibly kissing the female owner of the restaurant last Saturday. Now, the Star published surveillance video of Jackson Mahomes grabbing the woman by the neck, pulling her towards him, and then kissing her. An attorney for Jackson Mahomes told the Star, quote, "Our investigation has revealed substantial evidence refuting the claims," unquote. The owner of the restaurant told the Star, quote, "He forcibly kissed me at
I mean, he won the ground, the air, what is it, the ground award for being the best, offensive threat running the ball.
Yeah, what is the franchise factor running back with $10 million?
I don't know. It's not going to be high.
Yeah,
it's not going to be high. And as it applies to Saquon, I'm curious as to whether they put a restrictive, an exclusive franchise tag on him, or it is $10 million. Thanks, Ryan. Or do they allow for the market to dictate what Saquon's value would be by putting a non-exclusive on him? I'm curious.
Yeah, I just don't believe Saquon really has that leverage to really go up against the Giants and to get a long-term deal.
Yeah.
Being that he really only had one good year because he was hurt the previous two.
Yeah.
So he
two,
can't.
Right? 2 good years. His
first year and last year. Yeah. The ACL kind of slowed him down over the past 2 years.
Yep.
But he doesn't have that leverage to really fight, for what he wants, for what he thinks he's worth. So that's why I believe that he will play under the franchise tag.
Yeah, I think you're right. Well, we'll see what happens with that. And I'll tell you this, that was a good first hour. Make sure you stay tuned in because, we got hour 2 coming your way. I mean, that we might have to talk about the Mahomes brothers situation, man. Talk about somebody.
But think about it. It's not even Patrick. It's his brother.
That's what I'm saying.
That's what the kind of energy that he's sending to him.
How you gonna let your
the man just won a chip? Let him celebrate.
Golly, talk about sibling rivalries. We'll be back. Hour 2 next.
We are Fox Sports.
Hey, it's Jonas Knox. I just learned Discover credit cards do something pretty awesome. At the end of your first year, they automatically double all the cash back you've earned. That's right. Everything you earned doubled. All the cash back from eating at your favorite soup dumpling restaurant doubled. All the cash back from that trip where you sort of learned how to snowboard also doubled. And the best part, you don't have to do anything ridiculous to get it. No.
Yes, John Dickinson and Whitey Gleason with you here as we welcome you inside Warriors this week on 95.7 The Game for the next 3 hours. Whitey Gleason, John Dickinson, good to be with you, my man, and what a difference a week makes with the Warriors now. A 5-game winning streak. They sweep the homestand. They beat the Pelicans last night, and they're all the way up to 5th in the Western Conference. That's right, 5th in the Western Conference, now 34-30. But 8 of the next 10 on the road for the Warriors. That's the downside of things. The Warriors have struggled so mightily on the road, but it looks like Steph Curry is coming back tomorrow in L.A., barring some semblance of a setback. And that's very good news for the Warriors here with 18 games to go and already starting to look like maybe they're making that run that we've been waiting 4 or 5 months to see.
Yeah, I just want to confirm this, JD, and you ran down a lot of it, but I want to make sure this actually happened and that I didn't imagine it. So Steph gets hurt, and the Warriors respond with a 5-game winning streak, and they they make a habit of coming from double digits down to win, and defense fueled the winning streak, and they're all the way up to 5th in the West, as you say, just a game out of 4. Right, that really is happening, right? I didn't imagine that. That's actually going on.
That has happened here over just the course of the last 8 days.
Yeah,
so we were on obviously after the Houston game, and that was kind of an unimpressive. It was really an awful basketball game, top to bottom. An unimpressive win, but a win nevertheless. And we were talking a lot last week about how quit worrying about style points. This team just needs wins, and they followed up a real ugly win against the Rockets, which I think the next couple of games were much more aesthetically pleasing, even though the Warriors got down in all of them. Last night I thought was a little bit on the uglier side, but the second of a back-to-back, the 6th game in 9 nights, and the Warriors really pushed through, I thought, some fatigue to come back again from down 17 to win that game 108-99 and sweep the homestand, which, some big-time December into January vibes, I think, when the Warriors had that one other 5-game winning streak at home at the beginning of that homestand. It petered out on them toward the end there, and then Steph came back right after that, and the Warriors still were unable to gain significant momentum, but they're hoping this will be different with Steph back tomorrow in all likelihood, and the Warriors now 18 games to go and feeling like this team's starting to get it together at the right time, and the rest of the Western Conference seemingly falling apart behind them now. You look at the Clippers, who got beat again last night. They've lost 5 consecutive games.
The Clippers stink.
The Clippers stink. They haven't won a game since adding Russell Westbrook into the mix here over the same time frame. The Warriors went 5-0, and the Clippers went 0-5 just over the last 8 nights here with a couple of losses. Sacramento got them again late after the game that everybody was talking about a week ago down in L.A. And, things are looking up for the Warriors. The only thing that is a little bit of I don't know if I like that in trying to look at it from the perspective of the Warrior fan would be it's almost setting up maybe for a Warriors-Suns first-round matchup when you look at the way the standings are separated, but we're still 5-6 weeks away from potentially that, and a lot can change, and the Warriors still have to put that hold on one of these top 6 spots with 18 to go.
One of the things that's been amazing to see this week is what the Warriors have done, if you will, to other teams. I know Chris Mullin made the comment after the Warriors just beat the Clippers. He said it looked like the Clippers gave up. And to my eye, it sure did look that way. I think the way the Clippers came in here and built up that big first half lead, I think the Clippers thought, we got this, we've got everything going in the right direction. And when the Warriors made that comeback on them, they had that, classic Warrior third quarter. I don't think the Clippers knew what to do. They were at a loss. They didn't understand what was happening. And then last night, that's a nice gritty win too, because the Warriors were so flat when they started the game and they needed some kind of, energy. And then Kuminga almost literally flies to the rescue. But it was interesting after the game, Ron Adams had some things to say to Bonte and Mully. And he said, the schemes that the coaches are employing now, they're working. But he said, and you could see he was kind of struggling with how exactly to phrase it. He said, they're just playing with more juice, which I know is one of your favorite terms. And he said defensively now we're just finally playing harder. And you can imagine how frustrating that is for a coach to see that all season long and just know that we can play harder. Somehow, some way, for whatever reason, the Warriors right now are playing a lot harder. That's one reason why Steve Kerr keeps using that word gritty in his post-game assessments.
And it was a gritty homestand to go 5-0 and do it the way that they did. I do think there were some times on the homestand where they were forced with their backs up against the wall to play harder and play with more juice. I think that was part of these last 4 games where the Warriors were down double digits in all of them. And you could make the case whether the team they were putting on the floor was more talented, top to bottom, than some of the teams that they were facing on those nights. But they were able to kick it into gear just for long enough to be able to come back and to win all 4 of these games against Minnesota and Portland and the Clippers, and then last night the Pelicans, of course, getting the win against the Rockets to tip it all off. And it really has been something that they've been able to do at home and not able to do on the road. Now 27-7 for the Warriors on the home floor. As you look at it, the Warriors now in position here with 7 home games to go of these final 18. That means 11 on the road, where the Warriors are just 7-23, and the biggest difference has been defense. I mean, you look at this homestand, and the Warriors basically hold their opponent right at the 100-point mark for the 5 games of the homestand, and some big lockdown quarters, whether it was the fourth quarter going back a couple of games ago against Minnesota, the third quarters over these last couple of games. The Warriors have just found something. I think the scheme has been part of it. They have gotten a little bit more, we've talked about this, game specific rather than just trying to run their general defensive system. I think that's helped as they lock in and start to get into a little bit more of a playoff mode here, even without Steph. But the big question, and the question on the board here that we're going to talk a lot about for the next 3 hours at 888-957-9570 is, will it translate finally on the road with 8 of the next 10 away from Chase Center? Because the way things have gone this season, and this is as far down the path toward over 500 and putting together some semblance of a streak that the Warriors have had, it's all coinciding with Steph coming back reportedly tomorrow in L.A. But the one thing that has been the Warriors' kryptonite this year has been road games, and 8 of the next 10 are on the road. So we're about to find out if this team is going to dip back toward 500, and that glut of mediocrity and the teams that are battling for the play-in spots, it's going to happen again, as it has so many different times this year when they've been away from Chase.
It's funny because we all talk about the schemes, and it was, we all know, if you really are watching, the Warriors, it's not like they've just run one scheme. They play some zone, they play some box and one. So it's not like they've just had, we're going to try this defense. They're trying different things. So the point is how much that applies to your next few opponents. For example, are we going to see a lot of box and one when they play Memphis against Ja? That's what we're going to have to wait and see. The key is, can the Warriors still bring that level of intensity? That's why, JD, I think it's so great that Steph is coming back, amongst other reasons, and hopefully Wiggins at some point comes back, because it seems to me that if you're going to play with this much intensity and you're trying to cover more of the court defensively, it takes a toll physically, and you're going to need more players. I think Moses Moody's going to have opportunities to play more, but we'll see. I also want to just quickly address what's going on with Klay, because I think it's amazing that we've all been saying, Klay's back, he's back, he'll never make it back. Is he back? And it seems like now the focus that the coaches have led him to is, don't worry about getting back. And offensively, it looks like he is, but it's not about you becoming the Klay you were. It's about you expanding your game and becoming a Klay maybe that you never were before. So focusing on what you can be rather than what you're not. And it seems to have freed him. He's been rebounding. Last night, he only had 1 rebound, but he's had 4 assists in each of the last 4 games. So I think that's been remarkable, the way the coaches, Bruce Frazier and Steve Kerr, have impressed upon Klay. Look, forget about you being you. We need you to be more than that as you age, just like Michael Jordan became a more diverse player. And it's really amazing the way Klay is responding to that.
Yeah, it is, and he's been able to be the lead dog, really.
Yeah.
Jordan Poole was the lead dog in the streak back in December and January with a lot of monster games. But with Poole struggling, and I think the defensive attention more on Poole with Steph out, Poole really gets the brunt of the attention. And so Klay has been, because he had been the hotter player of late and the veteran, he's stepped up, I think, using the momentum that built in January and leading into February to where he's carried the Warriors offensively in a lot of these games. And yes, they've needed contributions from DiVincenzo and Kuminga and still Poole and others to be able to win these games. But when you look at it, it really has started with Klay dominating and leading and being in a position. We had Bob Myers on this week, and I was sitting in for Steiny, their bi-weekly conversation with Bob on the executive show. And, I just asked him about the fact that we just really, whether it's always been the Splash Brothers, but Steph is the lead. And then they get Durant, and that almost kicks Klay to third in the pecking order. There have just been so few chances to see Klay Thompson be the number one option. And Bob called it Washington State Klay, where you're the best player on the team, and you're going to get high volume, and you're going to get the ball in your hands more, and you're going to have to dribble and play make and score and do all of it. And that's been, I think, the most impressive thing. And in a league where so many stars, Whitey, can't wait for those back-to-backs and opportunities to not play, Klay Thompson has set the opposite tone in the biggest, most daunting potential stretch of the season for this team, playing in back-to-backs now, playing in the 6th and 9 nights last night, playing those first 2 games out of the break, playing the last 2 games leading into the break. There was a strong part of me that thought he maybe wasn't going to play last night, not because it was just a back-to-back, but because it was a 6 games and 9 nights back-to-back. But Klay making it through physically to be able to be cleared for it, but Klay wanting to get back to a point where he could play, not in some back-to-backs. He's played in each of the last 3 back-to-backs, including the 6 and 9. You mentioned the Clippers after the Warriors game and them just seemingly stunned and quitting. I mean, Paul George needed to sleep on whether or not he even wanted to play the next night in Sacramento. Kawhi tapped out and didn't play in Sacramento the next night. Now, Paul George did end up playing. The Clippers ended up losing that game by a point. But the league, and I think the Clippers' identity, it's a gutless identity. The Clippers' identity, what is the identity of the Clippers? The identity of the Clippers is load management.
Yeah. To me, it's kind of like,
the identity of the Clippers is when do our stars get to not play? Because they don't really want to play as much as they'd rather take that night off than get out there and fight through. And now we're seeing that being part of the reason why the Warriors have been able to jump in front of them, at least for the time being, and why they've dropped the 5 in a row. Incredible. They've lost 5 in a row. The Warriors have won 5 in a row. Warriors all the way up to 5th. Phoenix is rolling. They've won their first 2 games in impressive fashion, albeit against Charlotte and Chicago. With Durant, you start to look at the standings a little bit, Whitey, and I think Phoenix is going to win a lot of games between now and the end of the year. The Kings, now at 37 and 25, they may have enough of a cushion where they're actually closer to 2nd than they are to 4th and 5th at this point. And so we'll have to see how it all shakes out, but it's really starting to look like if the Warriors can be even just stable on the road, and the schedule's going to get more difficult, like the 5 seed is the most likely scenario if the Warriors want to be the 5 seed. Yeah, remains to be seen.
The next few games tomorrow at the Lakers, Tuesday at Thunder, Thursday at Memphis, then you're home Saturday to the Bucks, and then Monday the 13th home to those Phoenix Suns. So yeah, it's a tough stretch coming up here. To your point about the Clippers, I don't think we talked about this last week, but a week ago the Clippers lost that incredible double overtime game to the Kings by 1 point. Paul George did not play the second overtime. Did you know that? Because of a minutes restriction in that game.
Right. That was the second time that's happened this season.
Wow.
They lost a game in Orlando earlier in the year where the same thing happened with him and Kawhi. Both ended up not finishing the game.
Yeah. One more thing about Klay. The thing that's so impressive about what he's doing is really how he's doing it. We know earlier in the year and last year when he came back, he was hunting shots and pressing, and he's just been so efficient. He's been leading the team, get on my back, but he's been doing it very efficiently without forcing shots, making shots. It's been I'm sure it's been incredibly rewarding for him, and he has lifted this team. He's been one of the huge reasons why here they are all of a sudden when it looked like this whole thing could be slipping away, sliding down the drain. Nope, 5th place, game out of 4th, and 4 games out of 3rd, although that's a pretty big gap right now.
All right, he's Whitey Gleason. I'm John Dickinson. 888-957-9570. It's Warriors this week here on 95.7 The Game. We're with you until 1 o'clock, trying to make some sense of where this Warriors team is at now. 4 games over 500 for the first time this season. They've won 5 in a row. They're going to be on their way down to L.A. here later this morning and in the early afternoon. An afternoon game tomorrow against the Lakers, 12:30 tip. Warriors Live comes your way at 11:30 for that one. It's the Lakers, it's the Thunder, and then it's the Grizzlies. 3 games on the road, and the schedule's going to get tough. Grizzlies, Milwaukee at Chase a week from tonight, and then the Suns are in after that a week from Monday. And so the Warriors will be tested before another trip that begins in L.A., and it's a 5-gamer with the games coming basically every other day with some back-to-backs mixed in. And the key question of the day is, can this translate onto the road now with 8 of the next 10 on the road? And the other part of the conversation, Whitey, that I wanted to get into today, and this is something that has confounded me more and more as the Warriors have gotten on this roll here over the last week, and you start to look at the without Curry, with Curry records. And the Warriors with the 5 in a row, and this concludes now, assuming Curry comes back and plays tomorrow, Whitey, the Warriors will go 7-4 in this 11-game stretch without Curry. They are 14-12 without Curry this season. So 2 games over 500 without him. They're 2 games over 500 when he's played at 20-18. And it's absolute foolishness that I even have to say this, but I'm not making the case that the Warriors are better or the same without Curry or anything. I have to say it, even though I don't have to say it, and I feel like an idiot for even having to say it. But you know how people get whenever you start to go down this path. How do you explain the fact that the Warriors? It's not about Steph. To me, it's about the other players and the combinations of players and the way this roster was built. I think you could make a case that this roster was built in a manner to be able to withstand Steph missing time, which I think is a positive and actually a credit to Bob Myers and to his staff and to everybody within the organization, that you're probably going to have to play 20 games or so a year without Steph. Can you go 500 in those games or slightly better? I think that's a major win for this team, and I think they get credit for the way they built the roster to be able to hold up without Steph, which in many ways is saving their season right now as he prepares to come back tomorrow. But I guess where I take it in trying to analyze it and think about it is the roster built well enough with enough players that fit around Curry in the proper ways to where Curry's going to be fine. But how does it impact Jordan Poole with Klay Thompson now back and closer to the way he used to be? Wiggins has been up and down. He obviously has not been playing of late. There are 2 guys that I think it's impacted more than anybody, and they're Dante DiVincenzo and Jonathan Kuminga, who have, I think, benefited from the opportunity to play more, but haven't necessarily made the impact as it leads to winning when the team has been whole, because they just play less and they haven't been able to have the same level of impact for the time that they've been on the floor when they've played less, and the pieces have just not totally fit together. Again, it has nothing to do with Curry, but we always talk about you have to have the right kinds of players around Curry. I think for the most part the Warriors do, but do they have enough of those players? And it just hasn't clicked consistently enough for the Warriors when they've been closer to whole, which I think has been, the biggest reason now as we look at it with 18 games to go, why the Warriors are in the position that they're in and not better. They haven't played well enough as a group with Curry this season.
I think there's 3 reasons why, in my mind, why they've played as well as they have without him. Last year, without Curry, they were 8-10. So I think they learned last year, and I know it's different players, it's not all the same guys, but they've learned that, all right, we can do this. we can survive without him. Secondly, to your point, it's not just the roster, but the way the players fit, the way they play. If you have a guy like Luka and he's out, a little different now with Kyrie there, but with Luka's out, it's like, all right, who's going to do what Luka does? With this team, it's like we're doing what we do. Yeah, more guys are going to have to make shots, but we're still playing the same way. It doesn't disrupt the way we play. And thirdly, I think the biggest reason this year, both times Steph went out, they ended up with long homestands immediately following the fact that he was out. And that's just the luck of the draw, and they've taken advantage of that. But I think that's been a huge factor.
Well, and you could start to make the case that the Warriors now have benefited maybe more than any other team in the West with just how mediocre the West is. And look, I think if the Warriors end up fifth, although Phoenix in the first round is probably not what anybody would want, and certainly not what the league would want. I mean, can you imagine? I mean, just a quick sidebar on that. What a waste that would be just from a big picture NBA standpoint to have Phoenix and the Warriors play in the first round. But that's what happens when teams are either extremely injured and or don't value the regular season, at the level that they haven't valued it here league-wide in recent memory. It leads to these earlier round playoff series that throw everything out of whack potentially and change the course of who has some of the advantages there. But I think you could make the case, throw the records out once the season's done and you get to the playoffs and you figure out where everybody's at. If the Warriors are good enough to be a 5 seed, or even if they can somehow get really hot, which I think they're going to have to get really hot to go beyond that. I mean 14-4, 15-3. To me, if the Warriors want to be 4 or even have a shot at 3, I know they're, I think, 5 games out right now or 4 games out right now of 3. If they want to be able to do that, they're going to have to go probably 15-3 in the last 18. And if they go 15-3 in the last 18, it might not matter what they wind up. I think everybody's going to think they have major action as it leads to being able to make that long playoff run.
That's going to be really difficult given the schedule that you already ran through. That said, I didn't think they're going to win these 5 games, so we're still figuring out what this team is. Remember last week, I talked about how there's the possibility that of the Western teams that made the major moves, the Suns, the Mavericks, and the Clippers, there's a chance that for at least one of the teams, it ain't going to work out. And so far, we're seeing with the Clippers, they still got a ways to go, but it ain't working out. They haven't won a game since they added Westbrook. So that's a factor. I'm still hoping, JD, you're right. It looks like 4-5 Phoenix Warriors. Really good chance we'll get that. I'm still hoping we get Sacramento Warriors. I think that'd be a great first-round matchup, would energize, the whole northern part of the state. So that's what I'm banking on. If it ends up being Suns Warriors, it's too bad that one of those marquee teams would be gone early, but, man, you get a lot of eyeballs on that series.
It would be a massive, massive series, and I know we talked about it last week. I think the Durant trade is going to work for the Suns.
I do, too.
The first 2 games, and again, they played Charlotte and Chicago, so it's not like they've played great teams their first 2 games, but he has been awesome and awesomely efficient. And
he's the type of superstar you can plug in. Some superstars, how's he going to fit in? Durant, he's just a really good basketball player who understands how to fit in, so I don't think there's any question but that's going to work there.
Yeah, the better players you put around him, it just makes him the more efficient.
Yeah.
And that just makes the other players around him better. Mm-hmm. Like it's just it's a circle in a positive way.
Yeah.
It hasn't worked for the Mavs. I think the moves the Clippers made had the potential to work, but then they went and got Russ. And I think that negated everything because it gives the opposition a means to attack both ways. And you saw the Warriors able to do that by just, hey, Russ, you can have any outside shot you want, brother. We're going to take your man, and he's going to be helping off of you everywhere else on the floor.
And JD, wasn't that so interesting that Draymond talked about how that can affect you, and he would know because teams do that to him?
Yeah, no doubt. And mentally, and especially a player that has been as great a player throughout his career as Westbrook. Yeah. And Westbrook is so confident in his own abilities that he's going to take the shots, even if they're bad shots and you're playing right into the defense's head, because he is so stubborn to think that he's just, I'm going to beat him because I'm that good. And the reality is he's just not that good, and it plays right into the opposition's hands, and they can attack him defensively. Even in games where he's played well, he's had, and we saw this with the Lakers, he's had late game gaffes. There was another one last night in Sacramento where the Clippers had come back. The Kings had blown, I think, a 12-point lead in the final 3 or 4 minutes of that game. The Clippers had a 1-point lead. They had just gotten a stop. The Kings were going to foul in the closing seconds, down by a point, and they kicked the ball to Westbrook playing keep away, and it goes right through his hands out of bounds. And the Kings get what would prove to be the go-ahead possession. Sabonis ended up getting fouled and made a couple of free throws, and the Kings with their 5th win this season by a point. By a single point, they have won 12 games now by 5 points or less.
They're 4-0 in overtime. Yeah, they're 12 over 500. The Kings are 12 over 500. Wow.
Yeah, pretty incredible stuff there. 888-957-9570, 888-957-9570. We appreciate everybody watching on YouTube and Twitch as well, as we are off and rolling here on a Saturday on 95.7 The Game.
Service and devices. Actual speeds vary.
Ready to roll?
Back out to Klay Thompson. Thompson waiting. 3:50 to go in the game. Pulls up, lets it fly. 3-ball for Klay! Wow.
That was deep.
That was way out there by the logo.
Now back to Warriors This Week on 95.7 The Game.
John Dickinson, Whitey Gleason, and you at 888-957-9570. We'll get to some phone calls here coming up in just a moment, but how great has Klay Thompson been? That three deep, putting the Warriors up 95-93 last night. How about Dante DiVincenzo with the three that put the Warriors up 4? And I know Steve Kerr called this out as the play of the game, but the offensive rebound off of the Jordan Poole missed three that looked like it was about 3/4 of the way down. It pops out. DiVincenzo gets the rebound, finds Kuminga for the dunk to put the Warriors up 100-96. Warriors go on to win last night over the Pelicans, 108-99. And those two, Dante DiVincenzo and Jonathan Kuminga, I think have been, along with probably Kevon Looney, the three big heroes for the Warriors here on this homestand, beyond Klay Thompson, who's the obvious hero and leader of it all, who stepped up in a big-time way.
When the game was tied last night, I think it was tied 89, and I was thinking, what do the Warriors need to do to secure this? And obviously, make your free throws, defend well, no huge defensive gaffes, and somebody's going to have to make a play. You may need a play or two. Someone's going to have to make a big play here for you to win this game, and that was the big play. And it's funny because looking at the text line here, and I think these are some texts from your post game last night, but JD, Warrior fans, a lot of them are already getting nervous about the prospect of Dante DiVincenzo leaving because all of a sudden he is just such a huge part of everything that they're doing. And we'll see. He has an opt-out, and he probably will be offered a lot of money, so we'll see about that. But it's just amazing how central he has become in this last week to this surge that the Warriors are enjoying.
Yeah, DiVincenzo, I think, almost certainly has priced his way out of the Warriors' range, and the Warriors' range is basically the mid-level exception as to what they could offer DiVincenzo, and so he's about 4.5, I think, for this year, and
it's like
and
4.7 next year, something like about 4.5.
Yeah, a little bit
it's
over
his
4.5.
Option. Yeah,
and it's his option, so he can opt out and test the market. And I think DiVincenzo projects to be. Look at what Gary Payton II got. Gary Payton II got $8 to $9 million a year for 3 years. I think DiVincenzo could get 10 plus, 10 a year for 3 or 4 or even 4 years, depending upon the team, because he's still a young player.
And
I believe.
Yeah, so I'm
25 years old.
Some pointed out one of the reasons the Warriors got Payton was that he was a little bit of insurance against DiVincenzo leaving next year. So even when they made that trade, they had an idea that he might opt out, and his value has just soared since then. So we don't need to think about that now, though. He's playing out of his mind.
Yeah, and again, just to tie that part of the conversation off, the mid-level exception, the Warriors could basically, it's right around $6 million, and then it goes up. You can do a 3-year deal. So it really, the Warriors, I think, high-end offer to DiVincenzo would be 6 and about 18, 19. Somewhere in, I'm sorry, 3 and about 18, 19. So about 6, a little more over 6 average value. I think DiVincenzo might be able to get twice that.
Yeah, he might.
Honest,
one of the reasons he ended up here is because he wasn't able to get what he thought he was worth on the open market, so he came here, one of those prove himself deals, and he's held up his end of the bargain, needless to say.
888-957-9570. Let's get things started on the phones with Kathy here on Warriors This Week on a Saturday. What's going on this morning, Kathy? Thanks for calling in. You're on 95.7 The Game.
Oh, sure. My pleasure. I'm enjoying this conversation about the standings quite a bit. So one of the things that occurs to me is, of course, our coaching staff is going to look very, very closely at how things are shaking out in the next couple of weeks. But if we are pretty secure in the 5th spot, and if Phoenix doesn't surpass Sacramento and stays in the 4th, I think it would be a disaster to play Phoenix in the first round, and I think we'd get knocked out. So my sense is that the coaches are going to conveniently start sitting Klay and Steph toward the end of the season so that we can drop to the 6th. and then we would most likely play Sacramento in the first round, which wouldn't be without its challenges, clearly, but it's not. So those are my.
Yeah, you'd absolutely. I know there was the report this week from L.A., and then LeBron ended up getting hurt, and it kind of changed the calculus on everything. And the Lakers are finding themselves in a bad way here again. Minnesota beat them last night down in L.A., and so they're on the outside looking in, still playing without LeBron. But there was a report, I don't know if you saw this, that I think it was Brian Windhorst mentioned it on a podcast that the Lakers internally were targeting the 6th seed and wanting to play Sacramento because they thought they were the most vulnerable team. And basically the Lakers were calling them frauds. And hey, the Lakers thought they could get to 6. This was, again, a week ago before the news broke about LeBron. It was basically the same day. It was, hey, Warriors think they can get to 6, or the Lakers think they can get to 6, and they want Sacramento. And then it's like, oh, LeBron's going to be out for a month, so maybe not.
Yeah,
but,
there's an old Molly, I think it's a Molly Hatchet song, Flirting with Disaster, and that's exactly what the Warriors would be doing if at this point, and I know Kathy said, if they were secure in the 5th. Well, they're not, and right now you're just, if there's any way you can get home court, I think it's all about that. That would be ideal, but there's no way right now, as muddled as it is, that anybody can start thinking, sit this guy here and that guy there, and maybe that way we can end up with the seeding we want. Because you're still only, you're only 2 games out of 8th, 3 games out of 10th. So, yeah, you just don't have that luxury.
You got to be careful trying to manipulate seeding. And it's not the Warriors' DNA to manipulate seeding. I know I can already hear, without hearing, Steve Kerr, talking about the basketball gods and karma and how you start trying to manipulate things and it comes back to bite you. And so I really don't see the Warriors sandbagging to try and get another seed. I think part of it is those things. I think a big part of it is exactly what you just said, as far as the fact that you're not secure in the 5th, and if you lose a couple, another team might get hot. A hot week, you can go from 10th to 5. A cold week, you can go from 5th to 10th. And that's where the Warriors are still vulnerable. I think the other part of the equation, too, is the fact that the Kings are closer to 2nd, as crazy as that is, because the Grizzlies have been mediocre and got beat again last night. The Grizzlies have been mediocre for about 3 months, really, 2.5 months. They've basically been a 500 team, or slightly below. They can't win on the road all of a sudden, and so the Kings are only a game out of 2nd, and they've got I think a 3-game lead on Phoenix at this point.
That's correct.
For
That's
3rd
right.
versus 4th.
Yes.
So they're closer to 2nd than they are to 4th at this point, let alone 5th. And they just don't show signs of slowing down at this point. And again, I think passing Phoenix is going to be incredibly difficult if the Suns are healthy, and so the carrot of getting keeping winning to get Phoenix, I think, is going to be tough, because I think the Suns already have the tiebreaker on the Warriors because they won the first 3 head-to-head matchups. They do play again at Chase on that 2-game homestand coming up here in about a week and a half, a week from Monday. But I think the Suns, and they have 18 games to go, are going to win. I think they're going to win 14, 15 games. And so if you're going to make up what is only right now a 1-game difference, and you can say, hey, the head-to-head matchup can make that up, but for the Warriors to finish ahead of the Suns somehow, I think the Warriors would have to go almost 15. I'm going to say 15-3, and that might not even do it.
I hate to say it, but a lot of that depends, as we all know, on whether Phoenix can stay healthy, and their key players have really struggled with that. So I'm not rooting for it, but obviously it's something you have to keep an eye on. I'll also say this, and I understand Kathy's point that if you're the Warriors, you'd rather match up with Sacramento. But can you imagine if it comes to that any which way, Sacramento against the Warriors? Is there any other coach in the league that knows the Warriors as well as Mike Brown does? I mean, that would be fascinating in terms of, I know they don't guard anybody and you like the Warriors' chances, but it would be really amazing, the chess match between Steve Kerr and Mike Brown. That would be a lot of fun.
It would be the Mutual Admiration Society for a week and a half to 2 weeks. There's no doubt about it, and I think there are certain aspects of the Kings game that they have tried to model after the Warriors. I think they've been trying to do it for about a decade with Vivek Ranadive. They finally hit with the right combination of players and coaching staff and all of that, and they really are. I have not to get too lost in the weeds on the Kings, but I've been trying over the last week as they keep winning all these I'm trying to find an NBA comp to them. I think they believed coming into the year that they could be a playoff team, at least a play-in team. They've benefited, I think, as much as anybody. I know I mentioned the Warriors in that conversation at just how mediocre the West has been. They've been able to get hot, win a lot of close games. They have an incredible record. And they have beaten good teams, so I'm not saying they haven't.
And they're 18-13 on the road.
Yeah, they're the one team in the West, but a big part of that is the fact that they've beaten bad teams. I had the nugget this week. I was looking at between the Spurs and the Rockets, and even Oklahoma City and the Lakers, the teams that are currently on the outside looking into the play-in tournament. Charlotte, Detroit. Orlando, between those teams, the Kings are like 18-1 in 19 games.
That's like the Moneyball. That's like the A's in 2012 or whatever it was, beating Houston a bunch of times. Yeah,
and so they have. I mean, it's one thing to have a really good record against those teams, but they are like 17-18-1 against those teams that I just mentioned this season.
Yeah,
and look, they've beaten the Clippers twice in the last week. They've beaten Denver. They've beaten Memphis. I'm not saying they haven't beaten good teams. They beat the Warriors back in November. So it's not to slight them, but they've made hay in areas where these other teams just simply have not.
Because
and that's
JD,
why
they've played like the regular season matters to them.
Correct.
Yeah.
They're one of about 6 teams that's done that this year.
Yes.
Yeah, Denver, them, I think Milwaukee, Boston, and Philly are maybe the only 5 teams in the NBA that have played the regular season. Cleveland are the only teams that have played the regular season like it really, really matters. But I've been trying to come up with a comp as far as an NBA comp for a team that's they might have been good, but they end up at the top of the conference. And I haven't been able to. All of the comps I have for the Kings have all been other sports. To me, they're like the Vikings this year in the NFL. Right? They win all the close games, and they are excellent on offense. They don't play any defense. Right? I think so. And the other one that comes to mind is the 2021 Giants in baseball.
Okay.
Where all the close games late. Like, what is going on here? Maybe they'd be good, but they're not this good, are they?
Yeah.
And the other one is the 2012 A's with all of the walk-offs.
Yeah.
And when they came out of nowhere to not only make the playoffs but win the division on the last day of the regular season. So, but I can't come up. Can you come up with a basketball comp?
I'll work
to
on
what
it.
they're doing down the road there off of 80.
I'll work on that. I don't have one offhand, but I'm on it.
I'm trying to think of one. I mean, maybe there was a Pelican. I guess they were the Hornets. The Hornets, maybe the one year where they were the 2 seed, I think, and maybe 2008, and got beat by the Spurs in a 7-game series. They won a round, got beat like Chris Paul and David West and those guys with New Orleans was 1. Seattle, I know, had a year in 2005 where I think they were expected to be like a 30-win team. They won 50 games and were the 3 seed and got beat by San Antonio along the way, but they won a playoff series as well.
But they had Ray Allen. They had some pretty good players, right?
They had Ray Allen, but it was Ray Allen and just a cobbled together squad. Nate McMillan was coaching them.
Luke Ridnour
at that point
running the show.
Yeah. I mean, that was it's just that was kind of a random team that popped into my head, but just kind of a surprise. It really doesn't happen a lot in the NBA where you get a team that is expected to maybe be play-in level and they end up top 2-3 in the Western Conference, and I know the records and everything are skewed a little bit, but what they're doing is truly special, and we'll see. I think it would be a lot of fun, Whitey, if they ended up playing the Warriors in the playoffs, no doubt about it. And I think that would be a matchup that the Warriors would want in the playoffs if they could get it, but I think everything's so fragile that you can't really manipulate anything to get it as well. 888-957-9570. Gene in Oakland next here on Warriors This Week on 95.7 The Game. Hey, Gene.
Gene.
Hey, guys. Morning.
Hello.
So,
morning.
I've come to believe, I firmly believe we have an excellent chance of winning the whole thing no matter where we're seated. And I felt that way even before this 5-game winning streak. And the reason is, I look at this team 1 through 8, and maybe 1 through 9, because in the playoffs, that's about as deep as they go. And I have to wonder if any other team can even match us. I mean, we got 3 Hall of Famers, Wiggins and Looney as the starters. And then you put in Poole, Kuminga, Dante, and hopefully GP too, and maybe even a little Iggy. So my question to you guys is, what other teams that you know are as good 1 through 8 or 1 through 9 as the Warriors?
Thanks, Gene.
Yeah, Memphis has some depth, and I know they're struggling right now, but they have. I mean, they come at you with a lot of guys.
Well,
that's one team that comes to mind.
We were playing this game this week when I was in for Steiny with Guru, and we were just kind of running through like the teams that one the Warriors would fear, but other teams that would fear the Warriors. And we got into the conversation because the Warriors are not this season the team that they were last season. Like it remains to be seen whether they can get on a run. I think everybody believes that they can here in the Bay. It looks like maybe they are starting to get on that run right now, Whitey, but it is that they are less feared by others in the league than they were a year ago when they had shown in the regular season that they had the ability to be dominant. Maybe the Warriors do that between now and the end. Maybe we look back and it's like, oh, wow, the Warriors went 18-5 in the final 23 games or something like that, if you go with the 18 remaining in the 5 that have just been played, and that changes the calculus of the whole thing, and they do have that hot stretch. But we're playing this game of who fears the Warriors, who do the Warriors fear, and I'll be honest with you, among all of the teams in the West right now, the one that I would fear the most if I'm the Warriors is Phoenix. Mm-hmm. And they might be the only one if the Warriors are playing at a certain level. And so the Warriors hadn't played at this level to where we're starting to go, could they? But now they are. I think the next few weeks will dictate how real that is. But if the Warriors are playing at a high level, I don't think Denver scares them. I don't think Memphis surely doesn't scare them. All due respect to Sacramento, they don't scare anybody. I think there's a lot of teams that want to play them, and again, do that at your own peril. But Phoenix is the one team. The Clippers are they've got a loser culture, I think, with their top 2 players, and now with Westbrook there. And so, I mean, to me, in a way, the only team I fear is Phoenix, and that may be the team you get first.
Well, just to answer Gene's
in the
question
West,
directly,
in the West.
And I understand your point, but yeah, both those teams, and I know some people questioned the Suns' depth after they made that trade, but they got Booker, Paul, Ayton, Durant, Torrey Craig, you got Campaign, Terrence Ross there now, Damian Lee, Landry Shamet, Okogie, so that's like 10 guys right there. And Memphis also, and I know Memphis is very flawed, but just to the point how deep they are, you go Morant, Bane, Brooks, Jackson, Adams, Melton, Williams, Kyle Anderson, Tyus Jones, Clark, Conchar, Xavier Tillman. I mean, that's 12 guys. So there are other teams that have depth similar to what the Warriors have. That doesn't mean that those teams are as good as the Warriors, but there are other teams in the West that have significant depth. It's not just a Warrior thing. And the Warriors are still figuring out some of that at the back end of the bench. For example, they got the issue now with the two-way players, and they're running out of time. They got to make a decision, I think, on Jerome or Lamb. And at some point, JD, maybe we can talk about Anthony Lamb, because it's amazing to me. Warrior fans just can't stand him for the most part. I know there are some that like him, but you look on Twitter and people just wonder, why are they playing that guy? So that's going to be an interesting thing going forward here, because they're going to have to make a decision on him. And if they decide to keep him, I know some Warrior fans are just going to flip the spread.
Well, and I think what the Warriors are probably going to do is try to delay that decision as long as they possibly can. And Lamb is at 49 games now.
And Jerome's at 42, and you get 100 now with adding Quinones. So you got like 9 more games that they can play combined.
Yeah, but Lamb can only play one more. It's still broken down 50-50 for each. And so Steve Kerr hinted pregame last night that when Steph comes back, maybe they would, and he even mentioned Iguodala almost as if, and Wiggins, of course.
Yeah.
Maybe you don't need to. Maybe that with Steph shooting and Wiggins obviously being another wing, you could get away with not having Lamb on the not having him active here for a stretch until you get down to a point where you have to make a decision. I do think you want to delay the decision for as long as you possibly can because it gives you flexibility should there be an injury that might dictate you go in a different direction.
Of course.
And so, on the surface, we'll sign Lamb because you're probably going to need forwards more than you need guards, as we've talked about. But what if a guard gets hurt? Or what if you lose a big and you do want to sign somebody from the outside or something like that had been available prior to that March 1st deadline of playoff eligible players. So you do need to keep your options open. There's also a financial component to waiting until the last possible game or last possible date on the calendar with the prorated portion of what Lamb's contract would be for the rest of the regular season. 888-957-9570. Let's go to Mitch next here on Warriors This Week. Hey, Mitch.
How you guys doing? Good show.
Thanks.
What's up, Whitey?
Hey.
Katie?
Yeah.
Mikael Green, is he kind of like washed up? Because I figure a big buy like that, you throw him in there too. But, it's nice to see Kuminga. He's put up numbers, I think, the last couple of games. And, I would love to see Kings and Warriors. Kings, they were like before Bones Digger, all these good players, finally getting some good draft choices. Kings, same thing. They've had a history of bad choices. Only the last 3-4 years have they made some good choices. But everybody seems to be forgetting about Denver. I think Joker's going to win the MVP, and I think Denver's favored to win it all. They're pretty deep, too. Very deep. Michael Porter.
No, thanks, Mitch. I don't know if they're favored to win it all. They're favored to win the West, perhaps. They're not favored to win it all. But JaMychal Green, it's a good point, Mitch. JaMychal Green last night, JD, that was a pretty good matchup for him size-wise with New Orleans.
He wasn't washed last night, Whitey.
No, he was not. And you can see, we've talked about that. When he has those good games, you can see why the Warriors like him as much as they do when he plays like he did last night. There's still an element he can give them, and sometimes it's there, and for the most part, it hasn't been there every night this year. But last night, he had 14 points and 6 rebounds. There's still an important role for him to fill if he can find some consistency.
Yeah, and I think he is. I think Tim Kawakami, the Athletic, has put it this way. He's almost an insurance policy type big. He's almost the third big. He may play, he may not play, depending upon the matchup. But you do want to have him around.
Yeah,
and I think they'd rather have what he brings to the table just as a bigger body and somebody that can maybe stretch the floor a little bit. I think they would prefer to have a player like that over a player, say, like Nerlens Noel, who I know Warrior fans have just been clamoring for Nerlens Noel because he's 7 feet tall.
He's gone.
And
He just
shots.
He signed with someone. Who did he sign with? He signed with someone today.
And so I think they were going to want that, and he did. He signed with the Nets.
Yes.
He signed with the Nets.
Yeah. Well, remember
today.
Before the deadline, you were saying you think the Warriors could use a stretch big. And they didn't get one, but their hope is, JaMychal Green can still fill that role if and when they need it. That's the hope. And last night he showed that, hey, I don't care what Mitch says, I'm not done yet.
No, and he definitely had a big game. And I think that's the template. It's going to be every couple of games, maybe he gets in and makes an impact. I think as they get closer to fully healthy and pare down the playoff rotation a little bit, I think I start to pencil it. I mean, Steph, Klay, Wiggins, Draymond, Looney. Obviously, you got to get Wiggins back at some point. But then the bench is Poole, DiVincenzo, Kuminga, and Gary Payton II. If Gary Payton II is healthy, becomes the 9th. And so those are the guys that are going to be playing. And then everybody else is spot minutes, whether it's JaMychal Green or Anthony Lamb if he's on the playoff roster or anybody else. depending upon injuries and matchups and the like. 888-957-9570. Let's go ahead and get, you know what? Let's go ahead and pause here. We'll pause here. We'll come back. I want to give Joe an opportunity to speak, and Austin, I don't want to be rushed here, so we'll take the break here at the top of the hour. But Joe and Austin, you guys are coming up first at the top of the 11 o'clock hour, as it is JD and Whitey. It is Warriors This Week, and we're rolling on here on 95.7 The Game.
Jump pass over to Poole on the right wing. Poole tries to penetrate. Step back. Takes a three off the dribble. Popped out. DiVincenzo with a rebound to Kuminga for a dunk. Dante DiVincenzo snuck in from the backside and got the rebound. Warriors 100. Pelicans 96.
Now back to Warriors This Week on 95.7 The Game.
All right, hour number 2, John Dickinson and Whitey Gleason, 888-957-9570. Warriors go on to win 108-99. They sweep the homestand 5-0, so now 34-30. 8 of the next 10, though, on the road, including the next 3 at L.A., OKC, and Memphis, beginning tomorrow. 888-957-9570. Let's get back to the phones, Whitey, as promised. There's also a little bit of NBA breaking news. I want to get everybody caught up on this Ja Morant story, which is a little bit odd as well.
Yeah.
But we'll do that coming up momentarily. But let's get it going here with Joe, as promised, on 95.7 The Game. What's going on, Joe?
Hey, guys. Thanks for taking my call. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, sir.
Loud and clear.
Hey, first of all, I got 2 questions. First of all, who do you guys think would be Coach of the Year? I'm thinking Mike Brown. And then the second question is, with Steph Curry out, I just think the Warriors get better ball movement. They add a different flavor for defenses that haven't seen this type of offense, and I think that flavor is making it hard for teams to adjust. They don't know who the shooter is because they're passing the ball really, really good, and so I just think. Do you think that the Warriors are a better team without Steph Curry? I know you guys.
No. Thanks, Joe. Thanks for the call. No, and that's not where we were going with that at all.
Fair question, but no.
The answer is no. As I think it's more about other opportunities for players to play more and know they're going to get more minutes and have the ability to make some mistakes, and they're still going to get minutes to make plays. I think when Steph is back, you're just a deeper team, and you're a better team, and you just have to fit. The whole game flows together differently. The whole rotation flows together differently. The combinations of players that are playing together flow together. And look, I think the Warriors have taken this thing about as far as they can take it with the group that they currently have. I know I've said it a lot. You got to play the last 18 games with this team that they've played the last 5 without Wiggins and without Curry, and I can almost guarantee you it's not going to be a pretty record. And so it's time for Steph to come back and play. But what do you make of the reasons why, other than some of the ones you mentioned earlier, which are they've had a favorable schedule, fortunately, in the games that he's missed, a home-heavy schedule?
It's just the defense has made all the difference, and it's not about, they're moving the ball, ball movement's better without Steph. No, it's that they're defending, and that's not a reflection of him. It's not like, they play better defense without him. In fact, I think when he's back, the defense will get even easier to play in a way because it's a lot easier when you're making shots, and he's going to make more shots. I also think, the Warriors have struggled early in games, and I expect that when Steph's back and he's starting again, that will not be an issue. Because I was wondering today, remember last year when he came back late in the year, it's like, wow, he came off the bench. Would he be coming off the bench now? I was like, well, no, of course he wouldn't, because they've been struggling so much. So it's a kind of a roundabout way of answering your question, but I think they have missed him more than they've played well without him in some ways. And I think they're going to getting off to better starts once he's back in the lineup, hopefully tomorrow.
No question. And I think that has been the most glaring area where Steph has been missed. I think it's just there's just been so many odd things. When this team has been whole this year, they've tried to coast. The defense, for the most part, especially on the road, has been brutal. And the part that really has been unexplainable above all of it is their inability to close games against bad teams on the road and in tight ones. How many times has it been 5 minutes to go, Warriors are tied on the road, even against a bad team, fully loaded, and they can't win? I mean, you go back to the early part of the season, they're still feeling the sting of that 0-5 road trip at the beginning of the year that dipped them to 3-7.
There's been a lot going on behind the scenes, as we've talked about. We're not sure what those things are. It looks like maybe those things are getting more manageable. That Jordan Poole and Steve Kerr had a sit down, right? You heard about that? So So I asked when I was in for Damon Wednesday, and I asked Steve Kerr, what would you be willing to share with us about the talk you have with Jordan Poole? And he said, don't take it personally, but nothing. So, there's some things going on there that I think they are making progress. They've talked to Klay about his adjustments. So I think in addition to who's in, who's out, better defense, I think they've been addressing some of these things bubbling under the surface, JD. I don't know, but it looks to me like they're getting a better handle on those things as a team.
Yeah, and again, they have, if Steph comes back, I mean, they know who their top 8 is. It's just a matter of getting the right combinations in the fold with that top 8, and then Gary Payton II becomes the 9th as well. I think he probably, if he's healthy enough, becomes the 8th, and Kuminga becomes the 9th, but it's semantics. I think they're both going to play, and they're both going to have to play.
Speaking of Gary Payton, are you wearing a Sonics shirt today? Is that a Sonics
shirt?
I
did. I am. I am.
Nice.
That is. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. We'll show everybody. Yeah. I do collect. I have a.
Well done.
I have a bunch of, for those watching on YouTube and Twitch, I do defunct sports franchise T-shirts.
Nice.
So I have like Houston Oilers, Hartford Whalers, Montreal Expos.
I have a bunch of ABA ones, similar, vibe.
I've got a bunch of different T-shirts that I'll break out, and Sonics.
Very nice.
Sonics this morning here for those watching on YouTube and Twitch. Let's get to Austin in San Jose. Austin, you're up here on Warriors This Week. What's going on, Austin?
What's up, guys? Nice talking to you guys, as always. Listen, JD, man, I was in a good mood until you just mentioned taking my guy, JK. You know how I feel about Kuminga, man. That's my guy. But you just said something real subtle. You were going to move him down the lineup. And I was thinking, I don't know how that's possible.
If Peyton's back, if Peyton's back and playing.
That's not going to happen. So I got to vehemently disagree with that one, JD, just on the top. But I'll listen to your comment off air. But the other thing I wanted to say was, as far as the playoffs, connected Warriors versus disjointed Warriors, I call them. I mean, and that's going to be the difference is, say, how far the Warriors can go. We see a scattered team most nights. We haven't seen a real connected team. When they're connected, we've seen what they can do defensively. Even Lamb, I thought Lamb and Kuminga did fantastic jobs last night, staying in front of Brandon Ingram and some of the other guys that are really difficult to guard. So I want to give them kudos. And the final thing, going back to JK again, I want your thoughts on this, JD, because I know you've been a sort of an up and down Kuminga guy. But next year, in my mind, Kuminga's got to be in the starting lineup. So I want to get your thoughts on how that would look, and whether you think that's even possible. All right, we'll talk soon.
Well, I don't know where he would be in the starting lineup if the Warriors have Draymond Green on the roster and Kevon Looney on the roster and Andrew Wiggins on the roster with Klay Thompson and Steph Curry. So I think that's a little bit premature. To go back to the first part on Kuminga, he's gonna play in the playoffs. I think what I'm getting at is if he doesn't play well in individual games, Steve Kerr's going to have options to go away from him, and I think Peyton would be an option to play him less if he doesn't make the impact that he's made in these last 5 games. If he makes the impact he's made in these last 5 games, he's playing in every single playoff game, and he's probably playing about 20 minutes a game in every single playoff game. Like that's just point blank, cut and dry, not up for debate. And I think Kuminga and DiVincenzo, Whitey, to bring it back to when the Warriors are whole and this conversation about them being connected, because I think Austin's right on with it. When you look at Kuminga and DiVincenzo, they've been the 2 players that have been afforded, I think, more minutes, regardless to play well, to make mistakes, to work through it, because Curry and because Wiggins have both been out. And I think they've ended up being net positives because of it. When the Warriors are more whole, there can be a little bit of a shorter leash, I think, for somebody like Kuminga specifically, and just fewer minutes in totality for a guy like DiVincenzo. Like, does DiVincenzo start playing maybe a little bit more than Poole in certain games? Does that start to work out? As this team is more fully healthy, I don't know. But I think that's the balance. It's those 2 players. How do you get what you've been able to get out of them? And I think Jordan Poole to a certain extent too. How do you get a maximized, efficient Jordan Poole as he goes back into that 6th man role? Do you abandon some of the 3 guard lineups, which haven't been successful this year? it's the combinations and the minutes and the margin for error, I think, for a lot of these players that have been able to play without having to worry about having their minutes lessen too much, even if they don't play well.
Kuminga last night took advantage, as did JaMychal Green to a degree, of the matchup you had size-wise against the Pelicans. Kuminga's been excellent this week. As far as will he start next year or not, as you say, well, it would probably depend on whether Draymond's here or not. But that's neither here nor there. He's been a success story this year. I know there's been a lot of hand-wringing for good reason about the lack of developing. Moses Moody, hasn't developed well, and they traded Wiseman. Kuminga has been, for the most part, a moderate success story. And this week, he's been a huge success. So he's a big part of what they're doing. Certain matchups, he gives them that energy. Last night, I thought he almost literally flew in to rescue them. We also saw him this week making some shots. You and I have talked about how if he starts making like corner threes, how are you going to guard the guy? So it's all trending upward for him, and it's all positive, and his role is going to depend in the playoffs, how consistent he can be, and on matchups. But I think they got to be thrilled with what they're getting out of him right now.
888-957-9570. John Dickinson, Whitey Gleason here. Warriors this week on 95.7 The Game. The Xfinity mobile text line is open. Let's keep it going here with Oscar in Stockton, as we got a lot of people that want to talk on the phone lines. Oscar's next here on 95.7 The Game, and then we'll get everybody updated on what's going on with Ja Morant after that. Hey, Oscar.
What's going on with you guys, brother?
Hey.
I just want to say one thing about the Warriors fans that's complaining about Lamb. Lamb is one of our best players. If you look at the games, he made key shots. Even yesterday, he missed a couple threes. He makes the right plays. That's why Steve's trusting a lot. And, we got a dilemma, by keeping two-way players, but it's not a bad dilemma. That saved us from going out there in the buyout market. We do not need to get another player. You got to trust in the system. I keep on telling everybody that. I always call every day. The Warriors coaching staff, if you recognize what they've been doing, they've been game planning with the defense, playoff to get defense. And that's what the key is right now. We are playing defense, and the Warriors are buying into the strategies, and that's what's got us winning right now. And it's going to continue to happen when Steph gets back. Guarantee you, like I said, we'll finish top 4 for the season over with.
Thanks for the call. We'll see. They're going to have to play excellent. Top 4. Lamb is somebody that's trusted. He has made some big shots. I think he's a player that gives the Warriors a dynamic that they don't always have. I'm not sure about the whole ending up 4th part of it, though. We'll see.
I think one of the reasons some fans resent Lamb, and this applies to Jerome too, is because they don't see him as part of the future. They see him as, he's just here short term. He's not that good, and you'd be better off long-term developing a guy who's going to be around. But you know how coaches are. Steve Kerr knows that it's kind of like what he got last year from guys like Damian Lee and Juan Toscano-Anderson. Remember, we talked people would go nuts about Damian Lee. Why does he play? Coach knows for the most part, I'm going to at least get this from this guy. Anthony Lamb has been an amazing surprise this year. He shot the ball well. He rebounds fairly well. He's maybe not a great defender individually, but he's a smart defender, good team defender. So he's played more than Moody because he's played better than Moody, and he's played consistently at a pretty high level, and that's why he's playing. He's helping them.
Yeah, and that will be the case, I think, moving forward here, assuming that his contract gets picked up and he gets signed into that 15th,
one more game,
into that 15th roster spot. One more game. It sounds as if potentially the Warriors may not play him tomorrow, depending upon if Steph comes back. We'll see. But they do have the roster spot to sign him into, but they may want to delay the decision for as long as they can. To keep the roster flexibility and the financial component and all of that. Do want to keep everybody updated on this breaking story throughout the morning here as it pertains to Ja Morant. There was a report this morning, and the NBA had released a statement, and the Grizzlies now have also released a statement regarding Ja Morant. The NBA investigating a Instagram live video from Ja Morant from early Saturday where it had appeared that Morant had a gun.
Did you see it?
Had displayed a gun. Yeah. You can see it.
Yeah.
So yeah, you can see it if you watched it.
Yeah, looks like a gun to me.
It does.
Yeah.
And so the NBA released a statement saying they're investigating it. And the Grizzlies now have just announced that Ja Morant is going to be away from the team for at least the next 2 games. So there's been a lot of things floating around. I mean, this is not the first time that there's been an incident involving a gun that's been reported involving Morant here in the last couple of weeks. There was a story about him going and beating up a kid, basically, somebody under the age of 18, playing a pickup game. And so some ugly and odd stuff, potentially, with Ja Morant. He's going to be away from the team. And the Grizzlies are, we talked about earlier, the Grizzlies have kind of been in shambles since December, really. And, they're only 1 game up on Sacramento. I know they've played without Morant. They also got some bad news on the injury front. Just in the time that it's taken me to bring you the Ja Morant news, Brandon Clark is out for the season.
Wow.
With a Achilles injury. He tore his Achilles last night in Denver, and so he's done for the year. Woj reported that, and the Grizzlies have actually just confirmed that now with a statement. So they lose one of their bigs here, and They've written a lot of checks with their mouth that their play may not be able to cash, and now there's a lot of other stuff going on surrounding the Grizzlies and surrounding Ja Morant.
From a basketball standpoint, I wonder if maybe that's one of the reasons they haven't been playing well, if some of these things are things that his teammates have been aware of and they've been a distraction. I don't know. More importantly than that, it's alarming, and these seem like unforced errors that Ja is making, errors of judgment at the very least. They're that. Hopefully they're not more, some reflection of some issues that he has. It's so sad, and hopefully, we don't know exactly what's true. Obviously, they're serious enough where the team has to address them and the league has to address them. This is a guy who has a chance to be a young face of not only the franchise, but the league going forward. So hopefully he can come to his senses if these things are true and curb this before something actually tragic happens. It's a very disturbing and sad story ultimately.
Let's get to Jonathan in San Francisco next year on Warriors This Week. 888-957-9570. Hey, Jonathan.
Hey, what's up, guys? Happy Saturday. Hey, obviously a great homestand, 5-game winning streak. But what's even better is I don't know how active are they with the buyout market, but they're the only team that's getting 3 fresh bodies. If everything works out great and all those guys are back, they're getting a superstar in Steph Curry, they're getting an all-star 2-way Wiggs, and they're getting a shutdown defender in GP2. And I don't know if any other team's going to get that kind of reinforcement that we are. And I'm just so excited, man. Go Warriors.
Yeah, the reinforcements are coming. There's no doubt about it, Whitey, with Steph and obviously Wiggins at some point. I know we had Bob Myers on, and I was
going to ask you about that. That was very interesting.
Don't want to get into its specifics, and he didn't offer any specifics, but Guru, I thought, really delicately asked the question in a manner where Bob answered it, and I thought Bob gave more without getting into any of the specifics about what's going on. I mean, Guru basically said to him, is there a scenario where he's out for a long time or the rest of the season? And Bob said, no, I don't think so. And so I think that and the tone of it, and nobody knows, and maybe Wiggins addresses what's been going on once he returns. But I do think it was starting to get down that road of wondering, is it possible maybe that what's going on is so serious that he may not come back at all? And it doesn't sound as if that's the case, although there's no known detail as to what's going on or even when he would be back at this point still.
Yeah, that was very interesting, and I know I've heard from people on the text line that think it's disrespectful to talk about Wiggins and whether he's coming back, but everything that's going on, whatever it is, obviously is way more important than basketball. But if we are basketball fans, so we do have to discuss that aspect of it, and I appreciate that Bob Myers on with you and Guru addressed it at least in that way. And as he said, look, it's not as important as everything going on with him, and We don't mean to get into areas that we really can't discuss, but they don't believe, based on what they know, that it's something that's probably going to keep him out. So from a basketball standpoint, that's good news. And I think that also would suggest that whatever it is, hopefully they can have a positive resolution for it before too long, which is even better.
Yeah, no question, and I think that would be I think that would be something that would be welcome.
But it's a great point by Jonathan. That's a really good point. You look at who the Warriors have that they can realistically expect to be adding down the stretch. That's very encouraging.
Well, and it's all the more reason why this group gets a lot of credit, and it's really the second time this season that the group without Curry and without Wiggins has saved the season when it looked like it was. I mean, we talked about it a lot last week on the show, Whitey, just how bleak and ugly and bad the energy and the vibe was in the Bay. I mean, I don't know what was going on. I think you could feel it a little bit from the team, maybe the frustration of not being able to win on the road and all the losses starting to pile up and back under 500 going into this homestand and the first game against the Rockets. But people were so down after that Lakers game, the first game coming out of the break.
Which was kind of weird. Yeah. I don't know what they're expecting.
Which was weird, given how they'd played on the road, given the fact that the Lakers were a better team at that point than they had been, and obviously the Warriors weren't. But you have to give this group, from Klay and Draymond and Looney to Poole and DiVincenzo and Kuminga, along with Anthony Lamb and Ty Jerome. I mean, this group that's been playing the bulk of the minutes here is basically the same group that was playing the bulk of the minutes back in December and leading into January when the Warriors had that other 5-game winning streak on that homestand that kept them from really careening down 5-6 games under 500, which I think would have been a gap that they would still be trying to make up for at this point. And you could have maybe done it in January, although the Warriors hadn't played well enough since to make you think they would have. But you can't have that in March. I mean, if this team ends up 4 games under 500 in March, you're in massive trouble. You're basically saying you got to go 14-4 just to get in at that point. And now the Warriors do have a little bit of margin for error and more reinforcements than anybody on the way, to Jonathan's point.
And the single biggest key has been the defensive turnaround. I know they haven't played like Boston, Milwaukee, Philadelphia, Cleveland, and Denver the last 5 games, but still last 5 games, a defensive rating of 100.6 or giving up 100.6 points per 100 possessions. That is just an incredible turnaround. And I believe over that stretch, it's tops in the league over that 5-game stretch. An incredible turnaround. And you know that Steve Kerr, he's talked about it on this station. He's talked about it after games. That's been our single biggest issue is we just are not playing defense. And now all of a sudden they are. I give most of the credit to the players because they're the ones doing it, but the coaches have figured out a way to implement some opponent-specific game plans that seem to have energized the players, or maybe it's a combination of things, and they looked around and realized, all right, we're going to have to make a stand, but they have found, or they seem like they found an identity. Maybe we still need to see a few more games before we can rubber stamp it and say yes, but Steve Kerr, when he talks, as we discussed earlier, about their grittiness, that's what he sees. This team has to be. They're not very big, but they have to play very hard. They're relying on threes. Those aren't always going to be dropping. We've seen that the last 5 games, but that is the path forward. The Warriors have to be, perhaps more than we've thought of them of being in the past, they have to be a team that is gritty, willing to get physical and grind it out and play through these rough patches. We've seen it. It's really encouraging, and it's also encouraging, to Jonathan's point, specifically Peyton. You can see how GP2, how well he would fit into the way they're defending now. It's really exciting to think about.
888-957-9570. We are halfway through here on a Saturday. It's John Dickinson and Whitey Gleason. We'll come back. We'll reset everything. The home versus road splits, the with and without Curry. Curry expected to be back tomorrow. How much of what the Warriors have been able to do in the last 5 will translate to 11 of the last 18 on the road, beginning with the Lakers tomorrow. And is there anybody you fear in the Western Conference? We'll get back into all of that coming up here as Warriors This Week rolls on until 1 o'clock on 95.7 The Game.
Marshall gets it, penetrates, gets it on the far side, the corner. Murphy, up top, Daniels. Jump pass to the right wing. Marshall puts it on the deck, drives in, and swatted away by JaMychal Green. Knocked out of bounds. That was detected, inspected, and rejected.
Now back to Warriors This Week on 95.7 The Game.
Tim Roy on the call, along with Tom Tolbert last night, right here on 95.7 The Game. Big game for JaMychal Green, making an impact after not really making an impact the last couple of games. I think drawing the ire of many a Warriors fan, but the Warriors able to do enough. Kind of a tired-legged crew last night in the 6th and 9 nights and the second of a back-to-back. Not as much energy from Draymond last night. He was in foul trouble, a little bit slow. But what have you made of Klay Thompson's ability to, among the veteran players, as the season has gone on, he's been the most durable to this point, and I think the least affected by all of the games. And maybe that's because the Warriors took care of him early in the year and didn't let him play in any back-to-backs up until right before the All-Star break. But Klay almost looks like he's got more energy as he's sensing the finish line here with 18 games to go, and this team's starting to get hot.
He's become Captain Klay on the court, in addition to Captain Klay on the Bay, where he's kind of running things. And we talked earlier about how last week after he had that big game against Houston, second game of a back-to-back, he was so proud of the way he played, and he discussed how the coaches have him now focusing on some other things, rounding out his game as he gets older, similar to how Michael Jordan did that, and he's embraced that. As I said earlier, he's had 4 assists in each of the last 4 games. He's been rebounding well, didn't rebound well last night, but he's been so efficient in addition, shooting the ball, deadly range, but efficient, and he has led. Without Klay, they don't go 5-0 during this stretch. So it's been amazing to see him, always kind of a secondary role when the team was healthy, now saying, all right, guys, you're climb on my back, and we'll go for right in the sky, which they've done these last 5 games.
He's been absolutely spectacular. And I think he does, as crazy as it sounds, go in the category, as we've discussed here through the first 90 minutes on 95.7 The Game, the category of what's it going to be like as players start to come back and the adjustment period that could, short-term, stall some of the momentum that the Warriors have started to build up as Steph comes back tomorrow. Look, it's a nice problem to have. You want that problem. You want to be able to work through it still with a little bit of a runway before the regular season ends and the playoff begins, and the Warriors fighting for playoff seeding. Every one of these 18 games really matters. 8 of the next 10 on the road. But Steph coming back, is Klay going to get the same types of shots that he's been getting? Is that going to take away from some of the shots Jordan Poole's been getting or Dante DiVincenzo? The Warriors still have to sort through all of that. Jonathan Kuminga has been amazing over the last week on this homestand. When Andrew Wiggins comes back, how does that impact Kuminga? And just the simple defensive intensity, grit, and grind, can that carry on the road as you look at just the splits between the 20 and 18 with Curry? This team has not been good enough with Curry and fully whole, and it has nothing to do with Curry not being great.
Right.
Again, I'm going to say that. I said that off the top. It has to do with the others and the groups and the rotation and those kinds of things. 14 and 12 in the games without Steph, 20 and 18 with Steph. I think the grit, because it's had to be there, has been in the 26 games. I think there's a comfort that comes with having Steph and knowing that maybe you don't have to be as fine or play as hard as consistently, that you have Steph there to save you, that I think has bitten this Warriors team a little bit. Will the defense at home carry onto the road for the first time this season? The Warriors doing all of this at home to get to 34-30, 27-7 now at home, 7-23 on the road, and 11 of the last 18, 8 of the next 10 are going to be away from Chase Center. And so your confidence level that the Warriors have turned a corner, and will it translate on the road here after the 5-game winning streak at home? 888-957-9570. That question on the board. And then who do you want? Who do you fear? Who do you think fears the Warriors more or less than they did a year ago? A question from the week. And the Warriors and Suns. That is the one team. The Suns are maybe the only team in the West I would still fear, even if the Warriors are fully healthy on a little bit of roll. I think they're the one team in the West that could beat the Warriors regardless.
Denver still scares me. They've always scared me more than you over the years. Denver still scares me some. Phoenix potentially is scarier. Just a quick point on Klay. For all the talk of, will Klay ever be the Klay of old? I think now Klay's not worried about that. He's more focusing on being a new Klay in some ways and doing some things that Klay didn't used to do. And I think being able to focus on that and not worrying about, will I ever be what I was? Like, doesn't matter. I'm going to be this now. And I think that's freed him. And, what do I know? But just watching him play, he doesn't seem burdened anymore by, can I be the Klay of old? Like, no, I'm this Klay now, and we're seeing Klay do some things that we're not used to seeing him do.
Let's go to Joe in San Francisco, 888-957-9570. What's going on, Joe?
Hey, guys. This is once again, the best show on the 95.7 The Game. This is a Klay Thompson appreciation post, but I just want to say real quick about those of us who are wanting DiVincenzo to stay. DiVincenzo is 10 times the winning player that Kelly Oubre is, and Kelly Oubre got a $25 million contract 2 years. So I don't think he's going to be around next year, even though I wish he would, because he's a winning basketball player. Klay, as you know, historically had two quote unquote two jobs. Historically, he sat and he got the ball fed to him for threes, and then he had to go stop the number one, the wing, like CP3 or Kyrie. Go guard Kyrie. Go guard CP3. Go take on these smaller, faster guys that Steph couldn't get. His game is we're seeing such a blossoming of his game right now. He's bigger and stronger than so much of the wings that are out there right now. He's getting rebounds, but he's also now handling the ball a bit more. He's never going to break anything down, but he's making his own shots. He's poking around, finding spots in the D to make his shots. But last night, at the 2-minute mark, after Oubre got that rebound, fed it to Kuminga, C.J. McCollum tried to take Klay at the 2-minute mark, and Klay enveloped him. And it was a flashback to the D that he always played. And then they got the ball back, and then right after that possession, New Orleans, Klay knocks a jumper down. It was a big, I think, a turning point to seal that game, and they haven't been able to seal the games before. So I just think it's fantastic. Klay is showing things he never had to, and I think it's a sign of leadership. And I just wonder, JD, do you think in certain matchups that he could be that stretch four that Draymond joked about a couple years ago when he came back?
Yes, I think absolutely, and I think that's part of the discussion, and thanks for the call, Joe. That's been part of this discussion about him evolving as a player and rebounding more, and I do think as the league goes smaller, and Kerr's hinted at it a few times that Klay is strong and he's got the ability to guard up, and the Warriors have more options as far as guards to play with Jordan Poole and now DiVincenzo for this season. So I do think Klay has the ability. We saw it in the playoffs a little bit last year. He played some 4. And so, he may not be the player that can guard the little point guards as much, and I think McCollum's not quite as quick, so I think he's somebody that Klay with his length can still keep in front of him, but he does have the ability to guard others at different positions, which makes him all the more useful in a different way, but just as impactful, frankly.
Yeah, kind of reminds me of, even Magic, and Magic, of course, could always play all 5 positions, but later in his career, he moved to the 4, and I know they're not the same type of players, but it's a natural thing for a guard as he gets older, if he's got any size, to maybe move towards the front court. Thanks, Joe. That's a terrific call. Appreciate that. Just to clarify the numbers on DiVincenzo, because we were talking about him earlier. Yeah, he's got a 2-year option. Next year, though, it's a 2-year contract. Next year is his option, 4.725. So he could opt in from the Warriors for 4.725, and he almost certainly will be offered by somebody a lot more than that. So it seems unlikely that he'll be around, although the Warriors would love to keep him. He's come in here because he came here because he couldn't get as big a deal as he wanted somewhere else. But he came here to prove that he's worth more, and so far he's doing that. So fingers crossed, but I don't think he's going to be around next year.
Yeah, I think DiVincenzo can get maybe double what the Warriors would be able to offer him on the open market, at least in the $10 million a year range. I think, again, to me, you use Gary Payton II as the template.
Yeah.
I mean, Gary Payton II was basically playing about 20 minutes a game, maybe a little bit less than that, and had the impact that he did defensively. And he got, as an older player, significantly older player, 4 or 5 years older than DiVincenzo, got the 3 years and basically $9 million a year. I think DiVincenzo, I think he could get 4 and 40 if maybe more than that from the right team to come in and be a backup player that winds up being a finishing type player, Whitey, for another team. I think playoff teams could not that a lot of playoff teams have cap space, but and I know his time, not to bring it back to Sacramento, but I know he didn't seem to enjoy his time in Sacramento, but he would fit for them, I think, as far as a team that is a playoff team that would have cap space and be able to offer him more. They did trade for him.
Yeah.
Although, things didn't. But now, as a healthy player, he's been an even more impactful player. I just think his services are going to be coveted, is what I'm getting at.
Well, that's just where the Warriors are, obviously, when it comes each year to putting together a roster. When you're so deep into the luxury tax, if you can find a guy like DiVincenzo this year, Otto Porter last year, really good player who comes – short term, you won't be able to have them around long, but you get them at a bargain price. You got to jump on those guys. And Bob Myers has done a really good job of that so far.
888-957-9570. Let's get to D in Portland joining us here on 95.7 The Game. What's going on, D?
Hi, Whitey and JD. I love your show. I'm excited about the Warriors homestand, and I hate to be the downer here, but I do want to just add context to this Lamb issue. The reason why Warriors fans don't like Anthony Lamb, in addition to him being a bad player, is that he's incredibly accused of assault. He was named in the victim's lawsuit. The Warriors are aware so far. Marcus Thompson is the only person, and I think Madeline Kenny, to report on it. But, that kind of accusation just doesn't fit with Warriors culture. And, it's Women's Empowerment Month. Our city unis are meant to, define women's empowerment. It's just, we can't square that circle as Warriors fans. Thanks for taking my call.
Thank you,
Thanks,
D. Thank you for sharing that.
I think that's more than fair.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously that Vermont lawsuit, students suing the school claiming they mishandled sexual assault allegations, that goes back to December, I believe, a couple of months ago. And Lamb, I know, released a statement about allegations going back to 2019, and just in fairness to that, he has denied. He says the allegations, and I have the statement here made against me in 2019, that have recently resurfaced are patently false. I have always been fully cooperative regarding the alleged incident and have welcomed any investigation into the matter. Simply put, I have never committed sexual assault. So that's Lamb's statement on it, and the Warriors' statement on the suit was that Anthony, and I'm quoting again, Anthony is not a defendant in the lawsuit and to our knowledge has never been charged with any wrongdoing in any legal case. Prior to signing Anthony in September, we did our due diligence with the NBA and his prior teams, as we do with all players. If any new information comes to light, we will certainly evaluate it and act accordingly. And so, that's the statement from the Warriors. That's the statement from Anthony Lamb on that. But I absolutely understand where D is coming from on it, and D's not alone in her thoughts on that as well. So
appreciate the statement from D. Thank you for sharing that with us. Yeah,
absolutely, no question about it. And I think that is part of it. We've had a few people that have texted in that have said, "Hey, this doesn't fit," regardless of the specifics or the logistics as far as where the legal matter stands in it. But I do think it's important to give everybody's at least statement on it. And you can decide for yourself what you are or aren't comfortable with as a fan. So, we appreciate that call. 888-957-9570, 888-957-9570. John Dickinson here on Warriors This Week with Whitey Gleason as well, as the Warriors set to go here on the road, getting Steph Curry back into the fold, as the Warriors with the Lakers tomorrow, Oklahoma City on Tuesday, and the Memphis Grizzlies on Thursday before coming back home. This is a huge. They're all huge, Whitey, but this is a big stretch
I
for
know.
the Warriors here down the stretch here.
Yeah, at Lakers, at Thunder, at Memphis. Then you come home. Okay, we come home. Then you got the Bucks, and you got the Suns. Then you're at the Clippers again. Then you're at Memphis again. Then you're at Houston, at Dallas. Then you got Philly at home. So, yeah, there's no rest for the weary, and there's certainly no time to reflect on, hey, look how well we did without Steph. Big game against the Lakers. Without LeBron, you got to take care of business there, right? You got to beat that Laker team.
Well, and the Warriors haven't been able to do that.
I know.
They didn't beat the Lakers back on February 11th without LeBron. Now, the game coming out of the All-Star break down at Crypto.com Arena, that still is tough. That's a tough one. At the Crypt, down at the Crypt.
Yeah.
That one didn't surprise me coming out of the break that was kind of an ugly, clunky game. But the one that hurts is the one back on February 11th when LeBron wasn't playing, and this was still the shorthanded Warrior crew. Steph was out at that point, but that was even before Wiggins had left the team for the personal reasons. And so that's the one I think among all the Laker matchups that probably still stings the most as you look at it in relation to the head-to-head matchups. And yeah, you feel like you got to get that one back
as well as
without a doubt.
Pardon me, as well as the Warriors are playing. They're not very big. The rebounding numbers have been impressive, but, they're not a very big team. And the Lakers do have some size. LeBron not being there, they miss him, obviously, but they still have some size. I think that was a big factor in that last game they played. The Lakers got the game tilted in their favor downhill and just overwhelmed the Warriors. So I'm going to be very interested to see how the Warriors counter that and what kind of schemes they come up with to control, presumably, Anthony Davis and what they do about that tomorrow. So it should be fascinating, and that's the fascinating thing about this season. Every one of these games is so important.
Let's get to Khalid in Clayton. What's going on, Khalid?
Hello, JD.
We lost Khalid there. Khalid,
Hello.
give us a call back. I think we had a little issue with the phones there. 888-957-9570. 888-957-9570. Khalid, we'll give us a call back. We'll get you right to the front of the line there.
Hello.
Goodbye.
We have Zach ready to go in San Francisco.
Yeah,
JD,
let's
if you want.
Yeah, let's go to Zach. Zach next here on Warriors This Week. Hey, Zach.
Hi, thanks a lot. Thanks for taking the call. So I think, first of all, I think people don't like Lamb and Ty Jerome because they're bad. They're just really not good defenders, and Ty Jerome is very hesitant on offense, and he often holds the ball or doesn't take an open shot, and so he ends up in a turnover or a bad situation. But I think the 5-game homestand is helpful, but it doesn't answer the question, which is, can we beat a big guy? Because we got rid of Wiseman, and so now can we beat Joker? Can we beat Giannis? Can we beat Embiid or Ayton? Because all these other guys, teams that try to go small with the Warriors, they have a hard time, and they're not going to be able to beat the Warriors if you go small. It's really the teams that, like you said, can pound. I don't think the Lakers will be there in the end anyway, but it's really those kind of teams that can pound us inside, whether we can beat those teams.
Yeah, thanks, Zach.
I
Appreciate
agree.
the call. Wiseman wasn't helping you beat any of those teams. Like that's the one thing I will say. Wiseman wasn't playing against Embiid in the finals or Jokic in a conference finals or even Ayton in a first or second round. So Wiseman wasn't going to be out on the perimeter or in the short post guarding Giannis. So, I mean, you can get that out of your head. So, yeah, you can make the case that big teams and certain big players can hurt the Warriors. I think that's more than fair.
Look
But
at how many rebounds.
Wiseman,
Look how many rebounds Plumlee had against them.
but to think that Wiseman was going to be any factor in any of that is just foolishness.
Yeah, let me just say this about Ty Jerome, and I understand Zach's point. Ty Jerome is he's a two-way player. He's probably not a big part of your future, but I think one of the things he does to contribute is overlooked. Like last night, he didn't shoot well, but he had 5 assists, I believe. He has done a good job, like the games when Draymond was out. He helps them get into their offense, and you can cherry-pick stats, but this is not nothing. Offensive rating with him on the floor this year, JD, with Ty Jerome on the floor, their offensive rating is 125 and the defensive rating's 116. So they've played well when he's on the floor. That's not an individual stat. I know we tend to misrepresent that, but the offense has functioned at a pretty high level quite often when Ty Jerome is on the floor. That's why Steve Kerr trusts him, because he's a heady guard. He's a really good combo guard who can get a team into its offense.
Yeah, and look, it's just patently false. Another just patently false statement. Jerome and Lamb are not bad players. They're not. Ty Jerome has helped the Warriors this year. Anthony Lamb has helped the Warriors this year. I do think there's a stigma attached to two-way players.
Yep, no question.
That a lot of fans think because you're a two-way player, that means you suck.
And you're getting in the way of the players that should be playing who are going to be around longer. Yeah.
Exactly. And right now, that's just simply not the case. Like right now, Ty Jerome and Anthony Lamb are more playable NBA players than Moses Moody, than James Wiseman was with the Warriors. Now, you throw Wiseman onto a Detroit team with no expectation of winning. It's a full developmental mode, and that's a different conversation. But for the Warriors, those players are more, Patrick Baldwin Jr. is the one that's come up a lot because he's been able to come in and knock down a few shots here and there. Play PBJ? It isn't that simple.
Yeah.
It isn't that simple as far as the young players go. And it doesn't mean that the young players are farther away from being a factor or being able to contribute, or that their development is being stunted.
Yeah.
The two-way players are a means for the Warriors to acquire bench players and rotation players at a cost-effective manner because they're so strapped as far as the luxury tax goes. With all the other players that they have that are making huge cash.
Yeah, and real quick, at the risk of oversimplifying here, but Anthony Lamb is shooting 38% on threes, which is good. Ty Jerome's at 381. I know to Zach's point, he's tailed off a little bit. He's shooting 38% from the three-point line, which is good. If Moses Moody were doing that, he'd be playing a lot more.
Did you hear Steve Kerr at one point this week almost reference the fact that Ty Jerome was 50, 40, 90?
I think I did.
Sample.
Yeah.
I think were we both there that night, and we both kind of looked at each other or laughed, or maybe you heard the audio of it, and it was just it was funny.
Yeah,
it was.
Yeah.
I mean, he's helped them, but I mean the thing, and small sample size, but Steve Kerr loves him some Ty Jerome and some Anthony Lamb.
He may see a little bit of himself in Ty Jerome. Who knows?
No doubt about that. And in fairness to Ty Jerome's not going to be a two-way player next year. Like Ty Jerome is going to be, I think, on an NBA roster as a 10th to 15th man next year, which is a step up. And he noted the fact that he wanted to play for the Warriors because he thought he would get opportunities in the regular season to play a lot and showcase himself in a similar yet different way than Dante DiVincenzo. I think DiVincenzo was hoping he would get playoff games to show other contenders that he's worth a huge payday. But Jerome, in a certain extent, is thinking, hey, I can be a back end of the roster player and not a two-way guy. And I think he's proven that point in his time with the Warriors.
And he was selected, remember, in the 2019 draft about 4 slots before Jordan Poole was selected. So, yeah, he's been a prospect.
Yeah, and somebody that has played well for he was with Oklahoma City.
Played well, yeah.
OKC is where he's played well.
Mm-hmm.
And I remembered him. I mean, I remember he played well in some of those games. I think the Warriors had won all of them, but some of those games where OKC was blatantly tanking and Ty Jerome was one of their better players on the floor, frankly. I think the Warriors definitely took note. All right, let's get Khaled back in Clayton. What's going on, Khaled?
You guys hear me? Can you guys hear me again?
We got you, Kay.
Yeah, got you. Yeah. I think we accidentally hung up on you on that one. I think we put 2 lines together there for a second, and that knocked you out.
No worries. It keeps me on my toes having to have that happen to me every once in a while. Let me get into first. Let me just hit on this topic about the two-way players. This is the one thing that drives me nuts about our fan base. I love Dub Nation. They're passionate, but if we're arguing about Ty Jerome and Anthony Lamb in the playoffs, we're already done. They're not going to be huge contributing factors, in the playoffs. They're towards the back end of the rotation, and we know that the rotation is going to tighten to like 8 or 9 players, and they're likely not going to be in those slots. So Let's just put that out there. They're great. They're doing exactly what the Warriors needed them to do from the two-way positions, but let's relax and not worry about that, and let's focus on the other stuff. The team that makes me more worried than anything else going into the playoffs is the Warriors themselves. I am not worried about the Nuggets, the Kings, the Grizzlies, and with the Grizzlies, they're a hot mess right now with Ja Morant now being suspended, or at least not being able to play 2 games for the gun incident that happened on Instagram Live this morning, and them losing Brandon Clark to a torn Achilles. They're in trouble with all of that stuff going on, and they're going to probably have some adjusting to do in that regard. But the Warriors themselves are the ones that we have to worry about, because the problem with them is which team's going to show up? The one that knows how to play defense and has DubCon 3 coming back again? Or are they going to revert back to the lazy defense and the stupid mistakes with all the turnovers that are going on? I'm hoping that this next run, because the Lakers are kind of weakened right now, OKC's kind of like fluttering, based on what we're seeing, not what they did in the first half of the season. They were a surprise. And then the Grizzlies having their problems. I think the Warriors can get it together and start playing good ball and good defense on the road. The rest of the league's going to be on notice, and they're going to be worried, because I'll tell you, all the talking heads are saying, hey, take notice of the Warriors, put stock into the Warriors. That's the team that everybody should fear coming out of the West.
Thanks, Khaled. Appreciate the call there. 888-957-9570. Let's react to that coming back. We're up against it at the top of the 12 o'clock hour here. Robin in the city. We'll get to you as well coming up first out of the top of the hour break, as it is JD and Whitey Gleason. 888-957-9570. Warriors this week at 95.7 The Game.
Catches on the logo. Driving. Guarded by the bigger Jackson Hayes. Pumping. In trouble. Goes up with the left hand. No good, but there's Kuminga flying out of nowhere. A little elevation sensation. The two-hand slam has Chase Center rocking right now.
Now back to Warriors This Week on 95.7 The Game.
Final hour. John Dickinson and Whitey Gleason. Jonathan Kuminga.
Yeah.
What? Yeah, I know. We're flying
started.
through here.
We just started.
On again a suddenly rainy morning, and now on into the afternoon here in the Bay Area. Depends on where you're at, I guess, in the Bay as the rain returns here. 888-957-9570, 888-957-9570. A couple of phone calls to get to, including Robin in just a moment. But how about Jonathan Kuminga last night, real quick, going for the 19 points. He was a game high plus 13, 9 of 13, much of it at the rim. And Kuminga coming into the game last night was averaging 14 points per game on the homestand, beat that. He was 56.4% shooting, better than that last night. Had shot 57% from 3 on the homestand, was 1 of 2 last night. And, the rebounding has been there, 7 last night. Kuminga really doing it all. And I know you've mentioned a couple of different times an infusion of energy from Jonathan Kuminga at times on this homestand when the Warriors have really needed it and looked a little bit flat.
And I think he's been a huge success story for the Warriors in player development in terms of some of the things you just mentioned. His game.
No, they don't develop anybody, Whitey.
Exactly.
They don't develop players.
Yeah. The way his game has expanded. You mentioned the rebounds. He had 4 steals. He's been defending this year at a very high level. He's been knocking down some shots, some mid-range shots a couple games ago, some threes. So, yeah, not only is he blossoming, but he's expanding his game, and he looks like he's having so much fun. Didn't he last night look like he was just having a blast? And we haven't always seen that from him.
No, the Warriors get a lot of credit for the way that they've brought him along, and at times it's been tough love. At times it's been, hey, we're giving you this opportunity to play, and if you're not doing the things that we're asking, you're not going to play. And I know that had frustrated fans earlier on in the season, but I do think it's led to this point where they have carved out a specific role for him and given him things that they want him to do defensively, rebounding, energy, continuing to move the ball. And the other aspects of his game, which are so tantalizing, are showing out, I think, because the role has been simplified to a point. And he gives them a versatile wing defender when he's locked in and somebody that can match up with the athletes that are everywhere for a team like the Pelicans. The Clippers obviously have a couple of headliners, and they're going to need him in a lot of these different playoff matchups, considering the opponents that they're going up against.
I think he's so good that he's used to playing, or when he came here, was used to playing with the ball, and you can see how he's expanding his game playing off the ball with just some of the cuts he's made just last night. The play that DiVincenzo made to him as a great example. But, you don't do those things very often when you always have the ball. So he's learning where to go and what to do in this system and just throwing down some tremendous dunks this week.
888-957-9570. Robin in San Francisco, as promised here, as we get back to the phones in hour number 3. Hey, Robin. How you doing?
I'm okay. Good morning, you guys.
Hello.
Hey, Whitey.
Hey.
It's Whitey, right? Because Coles is gone, so I don't have to make the mistake anymore.
He appreciates that. Yeah, he's in Nashville now, but I know he appreciates that you remember him.
Hey, guys, listen. I Lamb on the floor with Kuminga. I kind of like that. It just seems, maybe I'm wrong here. I kind of watched the game off and on last night, so I can't have a full opinion on last night's game. But it just seems like that combination works. And last night, Kuminga was rebounding, but typically when Lamb is on the floor with him, I noticed that it frees Kuminga up a lot to do a lot of cutting, a lot of moving around the ball because he's doing all the rebounding. It's grit work. And I don't know if Warrior fans are really paying attention to the details of that. They just like the flashy, the athletic guy, the dunks. That's what the sense I get. Also, when it comes to developing players, I want to speak to the fan base a little bit. How in the world can you develop players? So you remember they had the youth movement. It takes time first of all. You can't develop them in one season. And then remember the youth movement with Patrick McCall, Jordan Bell, I guess Looney, and some others. I mean, and Damian Jones. You got to have talent first. Those guys didn't have talent, and nobody else has developed them, with the exception of Looney. And then it's hard to develop when you got all-stars on the floor. I mean, can we just put things in context and perspective for a change instead of just blaming? And let's talk about Jordan Poole last night on defense. He was a little bit better. He did. Did he almost stop somebody at the rim last night? So I just think that at times, we look for blame, our fan base. If it's not, it can never be Steph's fault. That's what I don't like, okay? But if it's not Wiggins, then it's Klay. If it's not Klay, then it's PBJ, it's Lamb, it's all these second rate. And then finally, the last go, now it's Jordan Poole. If it ain't Poole, it's Kerr. I mean, give it a rest, Warrior fan base.
Thanks, Robin. Robin always right up there among the best callers of the day.
I'm glad she brought up that what looked like a Jordan Poole block. And I don't know what your vantage point was, JD, but it was one of the weirdest things I've ever seen.
It did look like it. Yeah, it wasn't, though.
McCollum goes up with both hands. He has both hands on the ball and somehow loses the ball. And Poole was there, and so it looked like he blocked it, but it was just the strangest thing. Some of the things that I think we saw last night, JD, I love your thoughts as far as combos that worked and the rebounding. I mean, that was a good matchup for the Warriors. I know I've mentioned this a few times. The Pelicans aren't an especially big team, and so I think the Warriors, that's a really good matchup for them, and they were able to do some things in the front court that you might struggle with more if you're playing a bigger team.
Yeah, I think the Pelicans are not a bigger team, obviously, without Zion. They didn't have Valanciunas last night as well. And I do think they're an athletic team with some length, though. Sure. And that has been problematic for the Warriors. I want to go back to, before we get to Tim in Raleigh, I wanted to go back to Robin's point about Lamb and Kuminga together, because that's something that Steve Kerr has mentioned within the last week. In his effusive praise of Lamb, is the fact that combo, and I've even gone as far as to say that I think having the safety net and the stability of a player like Lamb, who does the little things, shoots it, is always in the right spot, can spread the floor, which means Kuminga doesn't have to feel like he has to shoot three-pointers every time he touches it, or drive from the deep wing and try and get all the way to the basket from there. It's almost as if Lamb, and I'm reading the tea leaves here, but it's almost as if Lamb, in a way, makes Kerr more comfortable to play Kuminga because he knows he has Lamb there with him to kind of balance out. And between the two, their skill sets are extremely complementary. I mean, between the two, they're almost the perfect player in a way, as silly as that sounds, with the shooting and the steadiness that Lamb has, and the athleticism and juice that Kuminga has. So I do wonder, as we start to shift now into a world where Steph comes back and Lamb may not be active as much, and I do think the Warriors have to figure out the proper roles and combinations for Kuminga to be effective now when he is the 8th or the 9th man in an 8 or a 9 man rotation with the other championship core players. That's where he hasn't quite been able to be as consistent, and has found himself getting fewer opportunities, shorter opportunities, and getting ripped out of the game if things aren't going well.
Do I think Lamb will be around? Will he be the one they keep? I think he will be, JD. I think Lamb will be the one that gets that roster spot, which I hate to say because I like Ty Jerome. But as Khaled said, it's like ultimately, big picture, it's not that important. But they do have to make that decision soon.
Yeah, I think the way Khaled said it was, hey, if we're talking about Anthony Lamb and Ty Jerome in April and May, then the Warriors are already done.
Night. Yeah.
Night for the Warriors at that point. 888-957-9570. Let's get to Tim in Raleigh, North Carolina, joining us here next on Warriors This Week. What's going on, Tim? Good afternoon to you.
What's up, guys? It's great to hear you. Whitey, I know we go back and forth with the Franz Wagner thing, but I'm not going to go there, man. Honestly, I think at this point, I think Kerr has kind of realized, and I hear what you just said, JD, but I think at this point, if Kuminga's not utilized out there in the playoffs, it's almost harmful, detrimental. Like, he has to be a part of this, like an X factor here. And I understand maybe Lamb is some kind of calming presence, but I think we kind of undercutting that this guy is. It's a little more skill with Kuminga than we realize. A very nice mid-range game, a very nice floor game as far as pump faking and getting to his spot. I mean, the three-point shooting, I think, is mid-40s since January. I think we, in our mind, we just see this athletic phenom, but he doesn't jump outrageously high on his jump shots. Has great form. I think we got to understand that. And I think Kerr, if you hear Kerr pumping up his offensive game now, like last night, talking about getting to the basket, Kerr is realizing, and this could have almost been done intentionally by Kerr to kind of start unleashing him and getting his confidence up now towards the end of the year. So a lot of people may not know what may be coming around the corner. But, I think we're always talking about like Lamb, like he's some kind of common presence. Yeah, Kuminga might get 1 or 2 turnovers a game, but the whole damn team gets 3 to 4. So let's give him his little due. But this guy's a sneaky, smart, patient basketball player out on the court, and I don't see it being some big transition when people come back. So I think we got to give him his props, man. Very nice mid-range game. Very nice with his pump fakes and his feet work. Even in the transition, that Euro step is nice. This is just not some shade and sharp jumper with no game, man. We got to give this guy props, and he is going to be an X factor in the playoffs if his confidence level is there and Kerr puts this guy in positions to be successful. We got to watch out, fellas. This might be something nice to see. So I see what you're saying, JD, like Lamb may be the common president. Maybe Kerr may need that. But if Kerr falls victim to not utilizing this young man on the floor, that's going to harm this team.
Thank you. Hey, can I just say, that's one reason, those reasons that Tim detailed for us, that's one of the reasons this game tomorrow is a huge win for Jonathan Kuminga. You remember the way he played last time they played the Lakers, and the Lakers dared him to shoot from the corner, and he was rendered ineffective. And Steve Kerr said, probably should have passed on some of those shots. He didn't play well in that game, and I think he's played really well since then. So that's going to be big to see how they defend him tomorrow, how he responds to that. I'm excited about that. I think he'll play well. I agree with Tim. Kuminga right now he's starting to approach that, the potential that we all saw for him. It's very exciting, but this is a big game for him against the Lakers tomorrow.
No, it absolutely is. And my point was more that the Warriors have to figure out how to still get the same kind of impact for him. I was referencing Lamb as a almost a Steve Kerr crutch a little bit, that where and I think Tim was picking up on that toward the end. But no, they have to figure out a way to make him a useful player in the championship core rotation that they're going to have here down the stretch. Once Wiggins is back, once Steph obviously is back tomorrow, things just keep getting worse for the Memphis Grizzlies. Whitey.
What?
We mentioned Ja Morant and this issue with the Instagram Live where he was flashing a gun.
How do you do that, by the way? Before you go any further, how is an NBA player, when cameras are everywhere and everyone's going to see everything, how do you do that where you hold a gun up? What's going on?
You do it because I think you believe that you can do it and get away with it. I mean, to me, when you look at the other allegations of the pickup game and the fight, and
there's a security guard somewhere that
the security thing with the Pacers where there was the red light laser pointed at somebody from an SUV outside FedEx Forum in Memphis. But to me, it's almost you're coming after me with all these allegations. I'll show you exactly who I'm going to be, and you can't stop it. Brandon Clark, Achilles, done for the season. And I'm not sure if you caught this, but Dylan Brooks picked up a technical foul last night. And so Dylan Brooks, in the fourth quarter, there's about 5 minutes to go in the game. He picked up a tech as the Grizzlies were coming unraveled in Denver after being ahead for a good chunk of the first half of that game. Dylan Brooks picked up his 16th technical. He had been tied with Draymond Green for the league lead with 15, and Draymond now has gone an extended stretch without picking up that 16th, which leads to an automatic one-game suspension. Well, Dillon Brooks just couldn't control himself. So Dillon Brooks picked up a tech last night, and it's number 16. So Brooks is suspended for the next Grizzlies game, which is tomorrow. They're already going to be without Ja Morant, as he's going to be, the Grizzlies announced. I know some have characterized it as a suspension. The Grizzlies said Ja's going to be away from the team for the next 2 games. The Grizzlies play the Clippers in L.A. coming up tomorrow, and then the Grizzlies play back at home against Philadelphia on. Oh, I'm sorry, no, they play the Lakers on Tuesday. Sorry, they play the Clippers tomorrow. They play the Lakers on Tuesday down in L.A. So Ja Morant's going to miss both of those games, and now Dillon Brooks suspended for picking up his 16th technical foul. And by the way, just real quick, it's every other tech now. You get a 1-game suspension. So if you get 16, you get suspended. If you 17, you don't. But if you get to 18, you get suspended for the next game again, and 20 and 22 and so on.
I don't understand this about Dillon Brooks, and I know he's we don't like him around here. He plays hard defensively, but he shoots 43%. All right, he's not a good shooter. He's 309 beyond the arc. He takes 16 shots a game. He's their second leading scorer. Why is a guy who can't shoot taking more shots than anybody on your team except Ja? It's the type of thing
he thinks he's better than he is.
Yes. When I watch him, I go, that's pretty easily fixable. You see him a lot of times late in games, and he takes it upon himself to take that big 3, and he doesn't make it. And I think that hurts them, and that also is an indication of some of the things that are a little screwy about that team.
No doubt. And yeah, he thinks he's a scorer. He thinks he's a big time threat. I don't
can't
think
shoot.
But again, I think he's got a little bit of that.
Yeah.
Russell Westbrook to him, where he just, if the shot's there, I'm taking it, and I'm good enough to make it, and I'm gonna make it. He thinks even if he misses the last 5, that 6th one is going in, and the numbers tell you that 6th one is not coming going in. Dillon Brooks is also running his mouth in an interview with ESPN yesterday, I believe, within the last couple of days. Might have been Thursday, if memory serves. But
about Draymond,
he said, quote, "I don't like Draymond at all. I just don't like Golden State. I don't like anything to do with them. Draymond talks a lot, gets away with a lot too. His game is cool with Golden State, but if you put him anywhere else, you're not going to know who Draymond is. He plays with heart, plays hard, knows the ins and outs of their defense. I guess that's why they like him over there."
Yeah.
Draymond didn't respond to it, but Dillon Brooks, the Grizzlies just can't get the Warriors out of their head. And, the Grizzlies are freaking in shambles right now. This Ja thing, they lose Brandon Clark, a backup big, and now Dillon Brooks gets suspended. For as much as we talk about Draymond and the temper and the technicals and all of that, and getting to 16, Draymond has not gotten to 16 yet, and Dillon Brooks just whoosh blew right past him, got the 16, and he's taking a 1-game rip tomorrow night in L.A.
Yeah, Christmas Day when the Warriors beat them. I don't know if it had already started or if that's really where it started, but since then the Grizzlies have just been, wow, what's wrong with them? I know they had a long winning streak before that, but that's a team. Yeah, they're going to have to try to figure out how to hang on now. And this Ja stuff, I don't think Ja can sit out 2 games. I wouldn't imagine that after that it'll be, okay, we got that all squared away. Everything's fine now. So, yeah, I agree with you. They appear to be unraveling before our very eyes, which is just going to make the West even more interesting and create more opportunities for the Warriors.
And by the way, again, looking at the standings, Sacramento has won 5 in a row, just like the Warriors have.
Hello.
And they were already 3rd.
Yeah.
They've maintained that 3rd spot. They are only a game back of Memphis for 2nd in the West. Like the Kings getting to 2nd, as crazy as that sounds, is very much still on the table. And the Kings, by the way, just for those that are scoring at home, those teams split a 4-game season series 2-2, But the Kings are going to have the tiebreaker because they have a 4.5 game lead on the Grizzlies for conference record. They have a 4.5 game lead in conference record. So if the Kings obviously are a game better than the Grizzlies between now and the end of the year, they would keep that 4.5 game lead. It would extend, so the Kings, all they got to do is tie Memphis, and they'd be 2 versus 3 for all the conversation we've had about who the Warriors want and what the matchup would be and who's going to play who and all of that. With the Warriors currently 5th and currently locked into what would be a matchup with the Suns.
Yeah, just a quick reminder, Thursday, the Warriors at Memphis, so that should be juicy.
2 trips. The Warriors still have 2 trips to Memphis. They play there Thursday. They play there
18th.
2 weeks from tonight.
Yes.
Yeah, 2 weeks from tonight they play in Memphis as well. Let's get back to the phones here. Charles in El Cerrito next on 95.7 The Game. Hey, Charles.
Yeah, thanks, JD and Whitey. You guys always do a good job. I called a couple of weeks ago when we talked about the contract with Sean Payton. The reason why I was calling was tonight Sacramento plays Minnesota, and I was at the game last Sunday when the Warriors played Minnesota. And I got to tell you, they're somewhat impressive, and Rudy Gobert didn't even play that night. And of the 5 games the Warriors on the winning streak, that was the tightest game the Warriors had on that Sunday afternoon game, at that 4:30 game. So I'm just trying to make sure they're included in the conversation. They got Kyle Anderson, they have Mike Conley, they have, Gobert, and this is a solid team, and I think they could do some things. And so I just hope that's a team that you guys also at least discuss and debate in terms of this conversation that hasn't come up so far. I know we talked about Phoenix. I know we've talked about Memphis, and you talked about Sacramento, but I think the Timberwolves, they made a lot of big trades early on, and so I just think that maybe they'll gel, and they don't even have Karl Anthony Towns yet. So it's just a team that I wanted to just put out there for
sure. No, thanks for the call, Charles. I have a hard time taking them seriously. I do think they're a bad matchup for the Warriors, the shorthanded Warriors. I think they're a bad matchup for, and that was why they were able to get the lead that they had on the Warriors and almost won that game. I also think, and we've seen this in the 2 matchups where Rudy Gobert has not played, and the Timberwolves have been better against the Warriors without Rudy Gobert. Like, remember that game back in November? The Warriors went in there with Gobert playing, and the
Warriors
dropped coverage on threes.
They destroy Gobert. Yeah,
I mean, they just absolutely annihilate Gobert. You had the note on.
Yeah, I was just going to say, Naz Reid, on the other hand, tends to give the Warriors fits.
Yeah. You had the note on them about all of their losses against bad teams this year. They have lost a lot of games to the Houston, San Antonios,
Detroit, yeah.
and Charlotte's.
Yeah.
I think 7 losses, you said, combined to those 4 teams. Maybe Orlando mixed in there as well. And so they're a weird team. They kind of play up to competition. They play down to competition. The Gobert thing, the Towns has been out a good chunk of the year. You could make a case if Towns had been playing all year, maybe they are up to 3rd or 4th, but there's a low-level component to them and an inconsistency to care that I think has really hurt them, in addition to Gobert being kind of a weird player that's great against certain matchups, bad against others.
I think if they have any chance to be the type of team Charles thinks they could become, it's going to hinge on Mike Conley. And he's only played, I think, 7 games there since he got there. I heard him on the radio today talking about how he's just trying to figure it out, learn the offense, and it's almost like a pickup game. But they for the year, turn the ball over a lot. I think having Mike Conley running your offense over D'Angelo Russell, that's a huge upgrade potentially. So I think if he can get comfortable and they can start playing well with him running the show, they do have a chance to make a run.
One final segment coming up next. JD and Whitey, Warriors This Week, 95.7 The Game.
Are you curious about who offers the best deals on top-rated Samsung, LG, and Sony TVs? The answer is surprising. It's not online, and it's not the warehouse clubs. The best deals on top-rated TVs are at Video Only. Don't believe it? Then check out the trade-in deals at Video Only. How about $500 for your old TV? Try doing that online. Before you buy that new TV, drop into Video Only. If you don't, you'll be sorry.
Are you interested in being an install or service technician? Good news! R&S Doors and Gates is hiring. If you have good mechanical skills and a knowledge of power tools, welding, and motor controls, you should apply today. R&S Doors has openings to repair and install commercial overhead doors, entry doors, and loading dock equipment. You must be able to work in a professional, fast-paced environment. Call 800-FIX-A-DOOR and apply today. That's 800-FIX-A-DOOR. Or visit rsdoors.com. R&S Doors. Look for the red truck.
Find what you love at the Mila Innovation Center at Friedman's Appliance in Pleasant Hill. Out of your dreams and into your kitchen, select the qualifying built-in kitchen appliance package that's right for you. With unrivaled technology and luxury-grade quality, when you bring home a Mila, you are bringing home true innovation. Now, for a limited time, save up to $2,100 with the purchase of a qualifying Mila appliance package. Visit the Mila Innovation Center at Friedman's Appliance in Pleasant Hill or at friedmansappliance.com.
Get up to $26,000 of ERC money for every employee you had in 2020 and 21 that qualifies. You qualify if you satisfy either one of these two tests. The easy way, your gross revenue drops a certain amount. The complex way, a full or partial closure of your business, a facts and circumstances test. You could only use the inside of your business up to 25% of capacity. Even an essential business like a food store had a 75% partial closure. Or supply chain disruptions. Or limits on the number of people you could have in an area, or many other possible factors. Beware of companies that only consider the easy way and avoid the complex way. And also companies that fraudulently say everybody qualifies, especially companies that only just recently came into existence and then can disappear. We've been practicing tax law for over 30 years. Call Moskowitz LLP at 888-TAX-DEAL. That's 888-TAXDEAL. 888-TAX-DEAL or MoskowitzLLP.com. MoskowItzLLP.com.
Replace your afternoon coffee with a 5-Hour Energy. It's perfect when you're feeling coffeeed out, and your stomach will thank you. Discover 5-Hour Energy. Learn more at 5hourenergy.com.
Join us at Odyssey as we all do our one thing, together millions of things for our planet. For spring cleaning, make your own cleaning products from baking soda and vinegar. When we each share our one thing, it becomes a million things for our planet. What's your one thing?
Progressive presents Adjusting to the Suburbs.
I never thought about space in my cramped apartment, but in this house, all I see is empty space. The sofa and ottoman look like tiny islands in a sea of hardwood floors. I could get 2 ottomans in the living room, but then I'd need another sofa. I could tell people I'm into minimalism.
Anyway, when you save with Progressive by bundling your home and auto, that's the easy part of adjusting to the suburbs. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company coverage provided in service by affiliates and third-party insurers.
Hey, I'm Andy. If you don't know me, it's probably because I'm not famous. But I did start a men's grooming company called Harry's. The idea for Harry's came out of a frustrating experience I had buying razor blades. Most brands were overpriced, overdesigned, and out of touch. At Harry's, our approach is simple. Here's our secret. We make sharp, durable blades and sell them at honest prices for as low as $2 each. We care about quality so much that we do some crazy things, like buy a world-class German blade factory. Obsessing over every detail means we're confident in offering a 100% quality guarantee. Millions of guys have already made the switch to Harry's, so thank you if you're one of them. And if you're not, we hope you give us a try with this special offer. Get a Harry starter set with a 5-blade razor, weighted handle, shave gel, and a travel cover. All for just $3 plus free shipping. Just go to harrys.com and enter code JOY at checkout. That's harrys.com, code JOY. Enjoy.
What do you mean he went searching for fresher powder? We have full classes today.
Instructor down at Vesper Ski School.
Toward each other to snowplow, honey, not away.
She needs more ski instructors to slalom through the day-to-day.
Pizza, fries. Whoa, Braley, no, pizza.
Indeed can help her hire great people fast.
I need Indeed.
Indeed you do. We instantly connect you with quality candidates whose resumes on Indeed match your job description. Visit Indeed.com/credit and get $75 towards your first sponsored job. Terms and conditions apply.
Klay Thompson dribbles on McCollum. All the way in. Throws it over the top to Poole. Topside. DiVincenzo. 3-ball. Got it! Big shot for Dante. His first basket of the game comes right now. And it gives the Warriors a 4-point lead.
Now back to Warriors This Week on 95.7 The Game.
Yeah, the first and only basket last night for Dante DiVincenzo, and it was a big one, as Tim Roy alluded to on the call there, as the Warriors were up 98-94 at that point. That came after Klay hit the deep three to give the Warriors the lead as they rallied again. Big fourth quarter, big second half, 54-42 Warriors in the second half. They hold the Pelicans to 99, 2 straight games with the Warriors holding their opponent under 100.
Wow.
Held all 5 opponents on this homestand right at the 100 mark point as far as average, and that's how the Warriors able to sweep the homestand to improve now to 34-30 with 18 games to go. But does it translate onto the road, and how do the Warriors sort through getting their rotation back in order with Steph Curry likely to be back in the mix tomorrow in LA? All things we're discussing here between now and 1 o'clock. Final segment as we fly through the morning and on into the afternoon here on Warriors This Week on 95.7 The Game, Whitey.
What do you think of this, JD? And I think Greg in San Francisco shared these sentiments on the text line. Maybe some others did as well. But just the notion that, okay, yeah, they're winning, but look at who they played here. They got this homestand here. They didn't play very good teams, so don't get carried away with thinking they're good. They haven't done anything on the road yet. They really didn't accomplish much during this homestand because of the opponents they played. What do you think of that notion?
I think it's irrelevant at this point. I think the wins are the most important thing, and everybody else in the West, for the most part, is mediocre. There are, at this point, I think you could make the case that there's 2 really good teams in the West, and it's like really good and proven teams with proven talent is probably the way to put it. And I'm not even putting the Grizzlies in that conversation. To me, it's Denver and Phoenix, and then beyond that, I think the Warriors can work their way, maybe not by record by the end of the year, although it's unfortunate. They may have to play one of those teams in Phoenix in the first round for their effort there. But I think, part of the reason why the Kings have the record the Kings have is because the rest of the West sucks for the most part. Mm-hmm. And so, making the most of beating Minnesota and the Pelicans and the Blazers,
Portland, Clippers,
in a week, the Clippers too, who are now a 500 team. It matters. That's how you. I mean that. The Warriors are taking advantage now of. If all of these teams are going to have a similar record and the Warriors say slightly better than the rest of these teams, then to me that makes the Warriors exponentially better than a lot of these teams when you consider their championship pedigree once you get into a playoff series. Like I almost don't even care how many games the Warriors win once you get in the playoff series. It's just how you're going to play and what's your matchup. And so, that's a long-winded way, Whitey, as I can do from time to time, from saying that I think I think it's great what they've been able to do, and I think it does matter.
It's a fair point to say, well, they've got to do it on the road, and we'll see. But I agree with you because of the way they've done it. They've done it with defense, and yes, it's defense against some of the not great teams, but it's better defense than we've seen in a 5-game stretch from the Warriors all season long, and we've known that's been their biggest issue, and the engagement, the way they've defended. And you have to be committed to what's going on and play with, as Ron Adams said, you got to play with juice to come back from the deficits we've seen them come back from. And we saw third quarter Warriors. Where was that? And I think the reason we hadn't seen that is because, again, when you don't defend, you can't get a run going. So that's why it's encouraging. And yes, they'll have to do it, but there's every reason to think they can keep doing it because they've done it over the last 5 games better than we've seen them at any point this year.
Yeah, and again, the opponents be damned. I think the road part is fair as you bring it up. They do have to do better and play better and more consistently on the road, and that's where this is going to be a real test for them. I mean, beginning tomorrow, keep it rolling, and if this team can win a couple of games, they're going to be motivated for the game on Thursday night against the Grizzlies, and we'll see what happens now with Ja. I mean, then the third game after these next 2 that Ja is going to miss is the Warriors. They return home off this West trip to play the Warriors on Thursday night in that TNT game. So they go Clippers, Lakers, Warriors. They actually play tomorrow. The Warriors and the Grizzlies both play tomorrow down at Crypto. 7 o'clock for the Clippers, 12:30 for the Warriors.
Your favorite name of any arena, right?
Yeah, I still for some I don't like it. I don't like it.
What do you do? You think Tuesday could be something of a trap game for the Warriors? They're playing so well. They got this nationally televised game tomorrow.
Well, let's see what
Steph's
happens
back,
tomorrow.
And then you got the Grizzlies on Thursday. You know, and OKC's had a nice year, but they've kind of been fading lately, and Shea hasn't been playing. So
yeah, they've decided to start resting Shea. They hadn't been able to beat anybody, although they blew out Utah last night. I know they had lost a couple to Sacramento since they shut down Shea Gilgeous-Alexander.
I think Utah's another team at this point that's saying, yeah, okay, we had fun this year, but we're done now.
Yeah, the Warriors did end up I'm trying to think what the Warriors have got a nice streak against Oklahoma City. They've been able to beat Oklahoma City a lot going back through the last few years, and so I think it's a good matchup for them. I do think OKC, getting that win, we'll see. I know OKC kind of looks like they don't necessarily want to win a lot. The Warriors did win there on the road back in February, so can they get another one there a month later? I think it's just a good matchup. We'll see how they do tomorrow. I think tomorrow dictates whether they overlook. If they win tomorrow, then I think there's potential maybe to overlook OKC. But you know what? To hell with it. If there's no excuses at this point.
The next two games are imminently winnable. There's no reason why you can't beat Memphis again. But the next two games, I think, are set up for you to be in great shape to win. And then you're going to start to change some of that narrative about how they can't win on the road. But you got to do it, obviously.
Right, and I think the Lakers are a tougher matchup at this point than the Grizzlies are. Or, I'm sorry, than the Thunder are.
Sure,
the Grizzlies on Thursday.
Yeah.
And so, we'll see. And the Warriors are going to be all keyed up to go into Memphis in the final game of that trip, and what's a TNT game, and they're going to want to really put it to the Grizzlies while the Grizzlies are potentially already down. 888-957-9570. Jimmy in Bayview next here on 95.7 The Game. What's going on, Jimmy?
Hey, guys. Great show. I just wanted to say Jonathan Kuminga last night, a few times in the lane, was being guarded by Ingram and was just ferocious. I've never seen that before. It was kind of my first, oh, wow moment from him, especially since his first game back from the break was so awful. But it was really like, wow, this kid can be super powerful. And the other thing was, I'm happy to see Steve Kerr finally adjusting some to the roster he's got, rather than, trying to force this roster to be another team. For example, with the foul differential, you just can't say stop fouling. You've got to implement some things that are going to help your guys, and you have to get to the line more, because this is a different kind of scrappy team where you just can't go, just run the triangle offense or whatever. Maybe he was, having a seance with Tex Winter, trying to find out something else that he can do with this team, which I really think he needs to search for. All right, thanks, guys.
Wow.
Appreciate the call. There have been some more
Tex Winter knowledge.
Yeah. I was going to let that one go. I was just going to let that one go. There have been some more of game-specific, I think, defensive matchups and things that they've done scheme-wise to allow them to, be in better position to win. It's almost as if they've taken a little bit more of a playoff approach to the regular season here this week, knowing that these games were so important. I think they've done it a little bit offensively too with Klay. I mean, Klay's been on the ball a little bit more. He's been dribbling. He's been creating. I think there had been a little mini shift of, hey, Klay's our best player right now. Let's ride him. And that has allowed them to be able to prevail.
Yeah, and I'll just say this. I know I mentioned this earlier, but it's going to be interesting to see how Kuminga plays tomorrow. He has played so well during this stretch, but he did play, to the caller's point, his first game back after the break against the Lakers. The Lakers took him out of his game, so we'll see how they defend him and how he responds to that tomorrow. Also interested to see, as we talk about the Warriors and the game-specific defensive schemes they're coming up with, what they're going to cook up for the Lakers tomorrow.
Yeah, and remember, the Lakers just dared Kuminga to shoot from three.
Right.
It was basically the Westbrook defense.
Yeah.
And
he didn't respond well. And he shot those early, and Kerr said, I think he told Tim Kawakami, he's like, yeah, you can get that shot later in the shot clock, so you just don't need to take it early in the shot clock.
Right. Yeah. Take that shot if the ball comes back to you. Don't take that shot as the first pass in your offense, which I think at times Kuminga does have that tendency to play as if he's trying to prove that he can be a scorer and a three-point shooter and somebody that can, when he gets into trouble, it's when he falls in love with that three a little bit, which Kerr did talk to him about it, and he really hadn't done it on the homestand after that one game in L.A.
Good point, yeah.
And also, I think he does get a little too wanting to drive from out there, put it on the deck, and really a lot of dribbling to get to the basket.
And back it in, and yeah.
Yeah, when it's more short post and cutting, I mean, that's the part to me is the dunker spot and cutting and knowing the right time to try and attack the basket, movement without the ball that's allowed the Warriors to find him in positions where he can finish. And the one thing that he can do maybe better than anything to this point is he can finish at the rim, and that was a big part of the action last night.
Mm-hmm. But you thought Shaedon Sharp's dunk was better than his, huh?
I did. Was that crazy? Was that crazy thought?
I think I did too. I asked Kerr that day, how unusual is that? Those were two spectacular dunks in one NBA game. And he said, no, it's the NBA. You see that all the time. I think he just didn't want to give Shaedon Sharp any credit. But that was a pretty impressive display by the both of them.
Yeah, Kuminga's was a big-time wow moment where, even people in the media section, I mean, you don't stand up and cheer ever, obviously, but you can tell, like, when people just start looking around, like, you just kind of look around, like, to look at how everybody else is reacting to it. That happened on both of those dunks. Kuminga and the Shaedon Sharp dunk from Tuesday against the Blazers. 888-957-9570, final 8-10 minutes here. It is Warriors This Week with John Dickinson and Whitey Gleason here on 95.7 The Game. Mike in Alameda is next here on the phone lines. What's going on, Mike?
Hey, Mike.
Hey, how you guys doing?
Good.
Good. I have a thought for you on this home and road record thing. It's interesting because Denver is also much stronger at home, as is Memphis. But I was thinking that at least with Denver, a lot of their advantage has to do with the mile-high altitude, which never seems to translate into the playoffs. So I'm wondering if you think their record might be a little inflated by this home advantage during the regular season, just like that time the Warriors beat them in that series, and we have time to adjust in the playoffs.
Well, but they also have a winning record on the road too. They're like one of two teams in the West that is winning on the road too.
Yeah, there are two teams in the West that have a winning road record: Denver and Sacramento. Sacramento's 18-13 on the road.
I know.
They've actually been. It's funny. I mean, I joke that they play the same game every night, and they did again last. Like every game they play is 35-32 into the first quarter, 38-35 into the first quarter. It's 70-65 at halftime. It's 135-130 at the end of the game, or 127-126 at the end of the game. So it plays to reason that they are basically the same home and away. They're 19-12 home, 18-13 away. One game difference at now 12 games over 500. But that is impressive. I mean, 18-13 on the road is impressive. I think they've taken advantage of a good chunk of the league that doesn't really take them seriously and isn't hip to the fact that they're actually a pretty good team, and they go in, again, valuing the regular season and have been able to knock some teams off.
Yeah, so I think I understand Mike's point about the Nuggets, but it's not like they only win at home because they do have a winning record on the road, as we said, 16-15. But then what you earn with that, however you get it, is you get more home games in the postseason where you have that mile-high advantage, although last year the Warriors did okay with that. But Denver's pretty legit. Denver's legit. And then you got a lot of teams in the East, JD, with winning road records. Milwaukee and Boston and Philly and the Knicks and even the Nets have winning records on the road. So another indication the East is just top to bottom a stronger conference than the West this year.
No doubt. And I think in the East, I mean, I don't know where you feel about it, or where you come down on it, but I think Milwaukee has passed Boston now with their 16-game winning streak for the top spot in the Eastern Conference. I don't know about Philly, but I think you could certainly make a case that Milwaukee, Boston, and Philly could all win the title. As far as the West, who could win the title coming out of the West? I think there's 3 teams that legitimately could make a case in the East, and I'm not even so sure about Philadelphia.
Right.
But we can throw them in there right now. In the West, I think it's only Phoenix and the Warriors, believe it or not, that can make a case that can win the title. I think Denver can get there, but is Denver going to win the title against Milwaukee or Boston? Probably not.
Yeah, I would put them in. I think they'd have a puncher's chance. If Philly's in there, I would put Denver in there. I agree with you about Philly. Philly they're a pretty good team. They're just not as good as the other 2 teams. And the Suns, we just have to see. I'm with you. They're scary. We have to see how it comes together. We have to see how they hold up health-wise. Otherwise, I'm with you. And then the Warriors, I don't know, because this last week, I didn't think they were going to play the way they played. So it gets back to that old, what they did last year and all those cliches and flipping the switch and never underestimate the heart of a champion. But we're seeing it this week. And now with Steph coming back and hopefully Wiggins at some point, I'm with you. You can't count them out, because they did it last year. They had a better regular season, but they did it last year when it looked like they were dead in the water, and then the playoffs started and off they went.
No doubt. And yeah, you look at the way that they were able to do that, and it's impressive. I was looking up some clutch numbers, and we had a couple of people had mentioned the Kings had come up from the Warriors' point of view on the Xfinity Mobile text line, 510. Warriors are 2-1 against the Kings this year, but a lot of people are saying the Warriors would have a hard time against them in the playoffs. I'm not sure who's saying that. I think the Warriors would love to play them in the playoffs, although the 3 matchups were all in the first 3 weeks of the regular season. So I do think you can, in some ways, throw those matchups out. The Warriors did win all of the 2 in Chase and lost the 1 in Sacramento. And again, they were all basically high scoring. Remember, the Warriors scored 89 points in the first half of the first game at Chase. And then the Kings came from 25 down to make it close late. There was the second game where Klay Thompson fouled Kevin Huerter on a 3 with the Warriors up 3 in the closing seconds. They didn't call it, and the Warriors won that game. And then basically in Sacramento, it was a 110-110 game with 5 minutes left, and the Kings, as they've done a lot, won the last 5 minutes of a close game and beat them back in November in Sacramento. Another texter on the Kings had said, they seemingly play a lot of overtime games, and yeah, they're 4-0 in overtime. They have won 12 games by 5 points or less. They have won 5 games this year by exactly 1 point. And I'm looking at the clutch wins.
Clutch is the final 5 minutes a game within 5 points, right? The margin of 5
exactly.
or fewer.
And the Kings are 20 and 13. They have 20 clutch wins, but the big thing for them, and it is tied for 5th in the NBA. Believe it or not, Miami, but they have the most. Boston has 21 wins. The Timberwolves, believe it or not, actually have 21 wins as far as clutch goes. But yeah, you look at the offensive rating. This is something offensive rating. The Kings have a 130.
What?
130.2 offensive rating in clutch situations this year.
Well, if you watch them play, and again, I know you mentioned this earlier, we don't want to get lost in the weeds, but it is a big story, and the Warriors could end up playing them. De'Aaron Fox gets, in the final 5 minutes of a game, he gets whatever shot he wants. He's so fast. He did last night, and he just missed the shot. At the end of the game, he gets the ball, and he drives, and he gets it just inside the foul line, and he gets that shot just about any time he wants, and that's a huge reason why his clutch numbers and their clutch numbers are so good. He's been almost unstoppable at times late in games. It's just a matter of whether the ball goes in or not.
Yeah, and the Kings technically 20 and 13 in close games. They're on a run though lately.
Yeah, but they still don't guard. They still don't guard people in the playoffs. I still have to think that's going to matter more than it does when you're playing, Oklahoma City in the regular season.
Yeah, they have it looks like they give up 117.2. Their defensive rating is 117.2 in the clutch, which is among the worst in the NBA. It's bottom 5, but offensively, they are the next closest team, Whitey. This is the Kings in a nutshell. Clutch offense, 130.2 per 100 possessions. The next closest team is 118.2. They are 12 points better in clutch offense than the next closest team, which is Brooklyn.
Ooh,
and then there's a group of teams that are obviously jumbled up there. So they are a statistical outlier in clutch offense,
Can't score.
which is why they've won all these games.
They're definitely going to score on you. No question about that.
Yeah, but having an unbelievable season, and who knows, we could see the Warriors and the Kings face off against each other. And yeah, those two teams have never made the playoffs in the same year since the Kings moved to Sacramento. It looks like, we'll see, about a month plus to go, but it looks like it's actually going to happen here for the first time, which will be a lot of fun for Northern California as well. And I'm with I would hope. I think it would be fun to see that matchup in the playoffs. I really do.
It would be, and it's just interesting the levels of expectation where the Warriors won a championship, and heck, can they get into the top 4 and avoid the play-in? And Sacramento, if they just get into the postseason, they probably would. They very well may have a parade just to get in after 16 years, just to get in, and anything after that would be gravy. But I'd love to see that, and I think it'd be a great series. I think it'd be a really fascinating one too, because of, as we said earlier, the chess match between Steve Kerr and his longtime assistant Mike Brown.
Yeah, Mike going to be coach of the year, I think, without fail when it's all said and done. Whitey, great stuff. Really appreciate it. We'll talk to you again next week.
Fun. Look forward to it.
For Whitey Gleason and John Lucan, I'm John Dickinson. Fox Sports Radio is coming your way next. We'll talk to you tomorrow. Warriors Live, 11:30. Warriors and the Lakers. Keep it locked right here on your home for Warriors basketball, 95.7 The Game.
Jim Morrison, it's the end.
Did you know that most people wait 6 or 7 years before they buy a new TV? That's a lot of time in front of one TV. So why not get one of the best sets for the next 7 years, like one of the top-rated Samsung, LG, or Sony models? Too expensive? What if you could get up to $1,000 trade-in for your old set? Who would do a stupid deal like this? Right now, at Video Only, you can get big bucks for your old set as a trade-in and a hot price on the new models. Don't be sorry. Check out Video Only.
Thanks to the Xfinity 10G network, my little brother's friends won't leave our house. When I was their age, internet with basically no interruptions was a pipe dream.
You sound like my grandpa.
Now through March 21st, new customers can get 1 gig internet on the Xfinity 10G network. It's just $30 a month for 2 years when you add mobile with unlimited data. Go to Xfinity.com/10G, call 1-800-XFINITY, or visit a store today. Requires paperless billing and autopay with stored bank account. Restrictions apply. Taxes and fees extra. Xfinity Mobile requires Xfinity internet. After